for listening to me. Right. This entire report has been written from a negative standpoint, and it is clear that the officer had only one outcome in mind from the start: refusal. The report shows there are 14 objections broken down into 25 statements, mostly non-material, whereas the 147 letters of support have been broken down into only 12 comments, with many material reasons excluded. It is absolutely clear there is an overwhelming support from the community, visitors and the parish council, both material and otherwise. The supporting statements in the document you received failed to include the outstanding reputation of the hotel and its importance to the economy of Hoco, material. Car parking has been well thought out and is sufficient for all hotel users, material. Modernisation was essential. Without it, the hotel would become unviable. The loss of this hotel in the area would be devastating, material. Many comments support the design, material. The roof will weather down, material. The hotel has been a dominating feature since construction. Domination of the skyline is not a new phenomenon for this property, material. The retention of one of only 2 working hotels left in the village, material. It is not mentioned that 14 objections come from just 7 people, 1 full-time resident, 4 second homeowners and 2 visitors. Much importance has been given to the neighbouring property Westview, whose owner objected despite purchasing the property in 2017 after much of the development was established. While not all these factors are material, it is incredulous that a planning officer wouldn't mention them, or the additional comment, the failure of planners to recognise the need for a successful hotel serving Hoco and the wider South Hams. Light pollution will be considerably less, shot off earlier than the Hope and Anchor and Co-Bar, both of which have had a significant increase approved by South Hams. Since this application was submitted, there has been stalling from South Hams, planning have acted appallingly, and unfortunately there has been a lack of support from Councillor Pearce. This is not just a planning application, it is the survival of a sustainable community, and while we request that you consider it on its merits, you should also remember that this is a very strongly supported, long-standing local family business who by their standards, morals and ethics have benefited this community beyond measure. The loss of this business would be devastating. Please agree to this application and allow our village to have a thriving hotel fit for the 21st century. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hocking. Can I just comment? And that, obviously, you profoundly believe and are passionate about the Cosmos Hotel. But
I'm passionate about my parish.
Yes, about your parish. But I think your personal attacks on both the local councillor and indeed the planning officer do not help your cause. And I think that you should agree that people are allowed to have different opinions.
I do agree.
And you will hear in the debate the differing opinions that go around in this room amongst councillors as well. But I admire your passion and what you fight for. But I hope that you will respect others who may have a different opinion.
I will.
Thank you.
Do I ask the same question I asked?
Chair, if I just made that, thank you for your comments and thank you for your representation. But I do have a duty to this committee to ensure that the officer reports are accurate, and if they're misleading, then they obviously have the duty to tell you that they're misleading and correct any inaccuracies, and every officer does that. And I am confident this report is accurate and you can rely on it. What the main focus of what you're considering is the changes from what's been approved to what's been, you're not saying that there can't be a hotel, that's the report isn't saying that there can't be a hotel, it's asking to look at what's been built to be improved.
Right. Members, any questions?
Yeah, I just have a question I asked the opponent. And when you mentioned residents, you're here on behalf of Parish Council and a lot of residents, is that correct?
Yes, indeed.
Right, okay.
Any other questions, members? No? Thank you very much, Councillor Hocking. We will now move to the ward members. Councillor Pierce, you want to go first, or you want more Councillor Long to go first? Councillor Long, you go first this time.
Thank you, Chairman. This is, as I think anybody would sort of recognise, a complex, difficult, and there are very sort of difficult circumstances considering it's dragged on for such a long time. And there have been issues, and I think there have been issues on both sides which have been picked up, and I think people acknowledge that. I think it is important for people to sort of look at the details, and I think the report that's come through has flagged up, numerous points, numerous changes, and we have to obviously take in consideration to all the views that have been placed here. We also have to look at the impact and the ability to make changes, and if those changes really do impact the area, and all the effects it has on the wider area, the closer area. I think we need to take those all into consideration. And I think it is complex, it is difficult. The one thing that we need to focus on is the economic contribution of hotel makes and the cost implications, changes, and the implications going forward. As much I'd like to say at this stage, I'll retain further comments until
the debate itself, yeah. Okay, thank you.
Shall I give him that?
Councillor Pierce.
Thank you. Since there were only, I think, 4 of us on the committee at the time this was approved, I thought it might be useful. I believe it was Councillor Foss, Councillor Brazil, Jackie and myself who were on the committee in 2014 when this was approved. I thought it might be useful for you to just quote parts of the report so that you can maybe understand why it was approved against officer recommendation. First of all, the comments that the parish council had sent in, and I have to say, I was swayed at the time by the parish council's passion for this and their absolute belief that this new hotel was needed in Hope Cove. So what they said was, South Hewish Parish Council considers the proposed alterations and extensions to the hotel to be essential for its sustainable future and for the benefit of the parish. The parish council also considers that the increase in visitors will turn out to be beneficial to local businesses, plus an increase in this seems the hub of the community, having supported the community over many years. One negative comment concerns the proposed roof colouring, and the parish council is of the view that the red roof tiles will be less obtrusive, blend better with surrounding roofs and adjacent roofs. And then added that Marlborough Parish Council also expresses strong support, considering the proposal to be acceptable and in keeping, offering a quality development that will provide local. Now, Mr. Allen mentioned a meeting with the Heritage Officer, and the Heritage report concluded, in this instance, in terms of the proposals, Heritage impacts, the officer advice to members is that the economic benefits resulting from improving and extending the hotel facilities would be in the wider public interest and would outweigh the impact of the development on the scheduled ancient monument. I think that's up at Bolt Tail. Then the amenity of the neighbours. Atlantic Lodge, which actually is at the other end, so we're not considering that this afternoon. The report said the element of the development will have significant impact on Atlantic Lodge. However, given the respective levels and general orientation of the dwelling, it is not considered that the proposal will be unduly overbearing and unneighbourly. Neither would it have a marked impact on the dwelling's visual outlook. And then Old Colonial Lodge, which is the long one, down below. When you look from the back, it's the one on the left, not the one immediately behind it, to the left. Whilst the proposed development has an impact on Old Colonial House, it's not considered that this is so significant as to substantiate a reason for refusal by reason of an unneighbourly impact or adverse overlooking.
Then on Westview, I'm not going to read, this was quite a long appraisal, but it did say it's considered that this property is the dwelling most impacted by the proposed extensions. The accommodation wing had been revised prior to submission of this application by removing another floor. By doing this, the views over the mansard roof are retained, but the outlook into the beach and harbour would be significantly interrupted. Similarly, the outlook to the north and west is obscured as a result of the main body of the hotel extension, comprised in the remaining phases of the development. The loss of private view is not in itself a material planning consideration. However, in this instance, the scale, height and proximity of the new development in its totality is considered to have an adverse impact on the amenity of the residents. The removal of the second floor roof from phase 1 is clearly a significant improvement, but does not in itself address the concerns identified. So I do recall, I think, at the planning, I think we knew that the Westview was going to come up for auction at the time because the gentleman who lived in it was either very ill or had recently died, and I think actually he moved out because he'd gone into care or something like that, but we knew he wasn't coming back to the house, so the house was going to be sold. And Mr. Ireland did say at the time he thought he was going to try to buy it, and that's why I think he gave that less consideration than he might otherwise have done. But the conclusion in the report was that the overbearing nature of the proposed building would have an adverse impact on the special qualities of this part of the area, the conservation of which is required to receive special consideration. In this instance, the weight to be given to safeguarding the proposed protected landscape outweighs the economic benefits that may be derived to the wider rural economy. And I think it was on that point, and that's the point the council made, that's the point the parish council made at the time. Actually, the economic benefit was the overriding factor. So the fact that the committee chose by a very narrow majority to override the officer report in favour of the parish council's view of this development being vital to the continued development of the code. But it was a very narrow and a very difficult decision. And I remember at the time thinking that it was an extremely difficult decision. And it was decided on a very narrow majority. Now, the fact that the extra rooms have been added below, considerably adding to the massing of the hotel when viewed from the sea and beach side, along with the gable baskets, which because of their height only add to the massing and the additional roof height and mass as well, and the added roof lantern in the owner's accommodation, which originally only showed one over on the side and now has two in the middle, all add up to development outside this already marginal envelope already consented. In truth, if the structural engineer's report revealed that the gable baskets were a necessity, then the building should have been paused for a further consent to get those gable baskets consented. In fact, had the extra rooms not been added and the original plans followed, there may well have been room for them under the proposed bank that was with the original plans, sloping down the cliff path. The pods for the lofts of the restaurant below have been added since the original consent and further complicate the situation in this area. The trials, I believe, because I remember talking to Wendy at the time, were not signed off through an official discharge of condition. And do not follow the traditional red clay tiles that I think did have permission. So you've been given a list of things, and I think often there's been a misunderstanding because documents have been handed over to the planners. An official application has been made to accompany those documents. And so they've been handed over as if for information, but they were not official applications. And the discharge of conditions has been a similar misunderstanding. Things have been talked about, but no official application has been made as conditions. I thought Mrs. Stu spoke very well and couldn't have put her predicament better at Westview. And if there's some way of modifying the building to comply with the approved plans, then that would be fine. But the dragging on, this has dragged on, but a lot of it has been because officers had extreme difficulty getting accurate plans from the applicant. And I do remember when Adam Williams was first doing, was dealing with the rooms under the hotel, he wanted some plans and he had extreme difficulty getting them. I remember talking to him a number of times and saying what's going on there. And I'm sorry the parish council seems to think I haven't been helpful, but at a certain point, you know, you can only help people so far, can't you? You can only say, look, we need plans, and unless you submit them and do it in the official way, we can't do an awful lot to help you either. So that situation is not a happy situation. You're going to have to make up your own minds on it. But my view is that if those mistakes that have been made now are compounded across the whole of the building, which I think they necessarily will be because the whole thing's kind of set off now on that path. The original consent was on a very fine line, and anything beyond that line, I think, is probably unacceptable. But that's up to you. You've got to make your minds up on that. But it is difficult. It has been going on for a long time, but I would not say it's entirely the planner's fault at all. You know, there's been changes of officers on our side, but a lot of it has been not being able to get accurate information from the other side. I don't know whether Mrs. Stansbury is also or whatever. I think Mr. Wymark.
Thank you, Councillor Pearce. I think we'll take a thread. I mean, you know, it's never as simple as one side. I'm sure there have been disagreements on all sides and lack of information, but you know, I think some of it does fall on South Wales, but some of it probably you know, we can't, if officers choose to leave or move on, you know, we can't control that. And I certainly think it's unfair of Stanbury to take all the flak for any of that. In my view, you know, what you've done is incredibly professional and we're lucky to have them. But anyway,
can I just come back on a few points that have been?
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, I mean, the delays in terms of this actual planning application, it's only had 2 planning officers. It was with Adam Williams. When Adam moved on, I took over. For personal reasons, the applicant asked for some time to sort out the plans because I realised the plans were incorrect. And it did take a while to get some of the plans. I also asked for, I showed earlier the drawing that has the height differences marked on. It took some time to get that plan. So that it wasn't until that point that I could actually thoroughly assess the proposal. I had to go back out on site and do another site visit. We've also given extra time since then. The applicant stated that he gave the plan in 2017. We've had several months between then and bringing it to committee now for him to gather all the evidence to demonstrate that he hasn't been able to provide the evidence. I mean, you touched on it earlier as well. The plans were some plans were sent in to Wendy in 2017. There was never an application made, as has been made now, for an amendment to the plans, and nothing has ever been approved. The orange tiles, they have not been approved either. I can find a record of an application on the system to approve those drawings either. All we have is our approval letter for the smooth red tiles that I mentioned before. Just trying to think if there's anything else I need to clarify. So, I mean, yeah, undoubtedly the hotel contributes to the economy of the village, but again, I would say, as would be expected, and as I indicated in the NPPF paragraph, none of that has been quantified. So just exercise some caution if that is the reason to be allowed.
Ms. Wyman, you want to say something?
I think it'd be useful in terms of the question you were asking, what's the difference between 2015 permission and where we are now? I'm pretty sure that Mr. we have that information off plan, so it would be worthwhile just slowing down things. I think that question was.
Well, we can't read that, but that's an 82 centimetre difference there. That's to the top of the gable that approved and what's been built, to the round to what's been built. The lower part is 58 centimetres difference. Obviously, you've got the railings on top of there as well.
Right, Councillor,
Just, if I don't mind, just what with reference to what I asked earlier, in terms of the impact of the new build. I mean, in terms of, I mean, okay, we're looking at phase 1 and phase 2 there, but we've actually got 4 phases. Have you any idea what the volume increase might be if that goes ahead? Just off, you know, ballpoint. I mean, it looks to me like it could be quite substantial. Because it'd be like a whole slice all the way along.
well, I think as Ms. Lansbury has actually said,
That's what's been approved. So we can only surmise that this is the section that's 82 centimetres higher. No, it's the one next to it. So sorry, it's that one, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, that's how again, so, I mean, it's difficult because it's only been submitted for phase 1. It would have been ideal if we submitted the whole application. But can only surmise that it's going to have to be a similar increase.
yeah, okay, well, I think you did say that if that's a result of this, it would mean that phase 2, 3 and 4 have to be, there's an incremental increase in those dimensions as well. That would mean there would need to be another planning application.
Can I ask this off the back of that and assume that we have to assume that if we agree this change, then we're almost in principle allowing further change because we couldn't expect it to do sort of just a drop back and just say no to the rest.
Well, you can say that. I mean, I'm sure, we can put a man on the moon, Councillor Hodgson. I'm sure we can find ways of not making you have to go up. Councillor Pringle.
So, I've got on my mind, 2015 was the agreed plan application. This is the only other application that's come forward.
Yes.
So shortly prior to this one in 2019, he submitted a non-material minor amendment, which was to secure the changes and to add in 4 bedrooms underneath.
And was that approved?
So that's these 4 here. No, it couldn't be done. It's too great a change in non-material minor amendment, and it requires increasing the number of bedrooms, which was already specified. So that was withdrawn. I think that's when the applicant has referred to discussion with Adam Williams, because that application was with Adam Williams. Then he resubmitted this current application now.
So the application that was agreed in 2015 and there is there now has been, it's not the same as what was agreed in 2015.
No.
So it's in breach of the original plan application. So my question would be, he's already in breach of the plan application. So
Well, this application is for a variation of that planning application. So it's to retrospectively getting it all in line. So you have to decide whether you feel that it's acceptable for this variation.
My question is that it's already been built.
Yes.
So retrospectively, we've got to go back and agree something that's already been built that was on the original plan application.
Yeah. So what happened is what's been built varies from the original plan that was approved, and as such, in order to regulate that and to regularise it, we have to do this retrospective variation of conditions, and that is that it alters a bit from plans. And from what Ms. Stansby said is that was tried to done as a non-major minor amendment, and that wasn't accepted, and so it's had to come with the planning application, and that's what we have before us. I think what Ms. Verarden was saying is that throughout 15 to where we are now, there have been other plans put forward which did show a slight difference in height. So whereas between this and what was in 2015 was 82 centimetres, what Mr. Arlen was saying is that there was a plan in 2017 where there's only 28 centimetres difference. But that 2017 was never approved as such. But his argument would be that he was discussing it with officers, and at that stage something should have been done there. Now, you know, whether that's relevant to us or not, I mean, you know,
But
I don't think
to our mind now, 2015 plan was agreed, and now we're going retrospective with.
retrospectively to try to regularise what's actually.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to
Yeah,
ask
okay.
you.
Ms. Councillor Foss.
Yeah, I'm somewhat frustrated, to be quite honest, because, I mean, I was one of the ones that Councillor Pierce already said what we agreed originally. I mean, Mr. Ireland, that we're perfectly entitled to come back and put in other plans that we wish, modify them and all the rest of it. And I will say this, because being vice chair of planning, I get people contacting me from all over the state hand, and he has spoken to me a couple of times about it, and I did tell him that he needed to get a more professional person because he was trying to run it himself at one stage, and I told him more than once that we're going to please get somebody. So now we're in what I would call excuse the phrase, a bugger's mode. It really is a mode at the present time because we've got an applicant who feels that we have observed well, and they've got a view. If you want a view on that, we've heard what Mr. Weller said. I mean, Ms. Stanford, for goodness sake, don't think I'm going to be critical of you at all because you put it up like you've seen it, and that's fine, and I accept what you've said. And the measurements that you're talking about from 2015 to the current ones in there. The problem I have is this: I get the distinct impression that the applicant is pretty well at the end of the tether. That you may not say still a planning consideration, but in the greater time it is because this hotel and one other on the south coast that I know of are in great use with a lot of local organisations throughout the sector. And it's of a great need besides the actual use of people that come on holiday. I am concerned about what we've got, and we've very much like to find a way of mitigating some of the problems we've got. Whether you will decide to turn it down or not, it's not you. I am really torn at the present time of what we can do. That's why I asked the questions about the time and the ratings. That's what I'm going to say for a minute, but this is not an easy one to do with taking a few straight.
Councillor Brown.
Mr.
Wine,
I'll be very, very clear, sorry. I think a lot of the points that Councillor Foss has made are can take into account absolutely the economic benefit of the proposal can take into account. I must urge caution that we cannot take into account the applicant. We need to be looking at it on land use certain building and the economic value of the building, the economic value of the business. But I do need to urge caution on your original comment around how the applicants at the end of this level. That may be the case, but we really can't be taking into account this discussion.
Yeah, that's not a planning consideration to whether I know it, but I mean, you can understand why that's going through my mind.
okay, thank you. Councillor Brown, and then Councillor Taylor and Councillor Rose.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, this is, I agree with a lot of what Councillor Foss has said. Clearly, this is an extremely difficult situation for us to be in. I agree with that hospitality has been pretty much sharp for the last 18 months, but that is not what we're here to consider. We are here to make a decision on this application based on its plans and planning merits or otherwise. And this application was granted before I joined the council, but with a set of plans which as it probably been said, was sort of just mid-there. I found the site visit very useful on Monday, and I do think this does have a significant impact. I realised what the applicant said is that what difference is 30 centimetres or 8 centimetres? Well, it can make quite a bit, and particularly if that ends up being replicated a lot. And I've looked at comments of our landscaping specialists and the AONB, which I take very seriously, as you know, and they're raising concerns about this. I think the materials used for the roof are problematic, and the raising of it has clearly had. We know that people are entitled to view, that they are entitled to community of their property and light and so on and so forth. And I do think that this has to a degree an impact on that. So it is a very, very difficult situation, but we are there. That's why we're here. We're here to make those decisions based on those difficult ones where it gets a bit difficult. So as a result of that, I've heard what everybody said, but I am therefore happy to move the civil officer's recommendation for review.
I'll second that.
Members, anyone else? Yeah. Oh yeah, sorry, Councillor Taylor and Councillor Rowe, then Councillor Long and then Councillor Panel.
Yeah, it's just a point. I definitely want to support the application. I find it very difficult when we get this retrospective stuff coming on, because we could all get planned and then suddenly do something different and get retrospective. And I think that's one against the policies of what we are doing. We sort of approve, and that's what we approve. And then suddenly it goes off that. I mean, this is a landmark anyway, and you can see it from anywhere. You could agree on say where you look at, and you see, well, that's the council house, it's been there forever. But it is a difficult one to deal with, and I find it. I want to support the applicant, but I find it difficult to support retrospective.
Fair enough. Councillor Rowe.
Did you want to speak first?
You're going to tell us the retrospective isn't the material plan. We all know that. Councillor
What I
Rowe.
would like to say is, how did it manage to get to where it is now? Because surely that they have building control, they have building control officers who will be going around to check what they're doing. Where was the building control?
Let Mr. Lyon come in now and then.
I honestly don't know who they're using for building control. They don't use the building control. And all building control did was make sure it's being built in accordance with building regulations. They do not check to see whether it is being built in accordance with the planning approval. Two completely separate things. So it's not something that would be picked up by building control.
You know, I think it's very sad that we've got to where we are. And we want to support them on the one hand, but on the other hand, there are so many factors against this application that it is a very difficult one. I'd like also to correct Councillor Keelis, please, that I was a member of DM. I've been there since 1995. I think I'm probably going to stay in my work. There's anybody on there who's been in DM.
No.
It's the first time. And we swapped places, and I went on, I think it was 25%. But I've been there very long.
No, thank you, Councillor Rowe.
Is there any way that we can sort of do a balancing act? And I'm not saying that a plan is to do a balancing act.
Well,
And I think that's where we are now.
let's hear what other people want to say, Rose. I mean, it's going to be a very tricky decision whichever way.
Do a balancing act.
So let's hear what other members have to say. Councillor Long.
Chairman, everybody says it's a difficult decision. We all know plans can change, and an architect draws up the plans, and when they get to be built, and when structural needs come in, they can regulations. I think with this one, there is, as everybody said, there have been problems on both sides, and I think the change of officers over the period the circumstances, changing the architect. So there's a you know, let's say 50-50, but there are problems on both sides as to why it's got to this position. And I think Councillor Foster said, you know, if you can advise to get something professional rather than try and do the development or work with development themselves. But my question, well, you know, my comment is that the economic impact and benefit of this site, as was highlighted at the original planning approval, still remains. There's no real change from the original report, and I believe that is solidly the case. There are issues, there are problems with this that I believe should be mitigated, and I don't believe that the ongoing phases, phase 2, 3 and 4, couldn't be adapted, couldn't be changed after this. But I think there are substantial areas that could be changed to this. I fear that overall this time, and with this level of problems we've had with COVID, whether the ability to make changes or modify the present structure by taking down, and I did bring a measure with me because when we were talking sort of 82 centimetres, it's always, you know, easy to see, or 52 or 25, you know, all of that really comes down. If you are taking 85, 25, 52 centimetres off a building like that, the sheer cost of doing it, I think the comment was made, I don't think there's any logic to doing that, although that would be the way of achieving it. I don't think that could be done without serious damage to the building and the integrity of the building and the ability, you know, just the sheer cost. But there are elements that have been said, the railings on the top, which are impactful. The colours of the tiles, because I think there is still some doubt as to what was approved, because there's discussion about grey, and that wasn't approved, it was red. And then whether it was flatbed or hand tile, and if the flatbed was the same colour, we would be having the same discussion. And I know, Cheryl, you know, you said that, you know, questions have been raised as to what was sent in, whether it was right, whether it was wrong. My fear is that this is, and it is being developed to become, you know, to maintain the economic benefit to the area. So all the economic arguments still apply. What is being built as a new building is more sustainable. It is lower energy recovery, so it's meeting all of those future requirements where the old hotel will not. And I fear I don't like, you know, things being built and us having to go back and look at them again. But my question would be, I think there are mitigation measures that could be made to this rather than ripping off a roof and readjusting it, that could make it acceptable and work with the other phases. I do fear that we could lose a hotel. I don't want to lose hotels. We've lost hotels throughout the area. And I wouldn't want to see this develop into sort of plots of apartments. I think the economic benefit to the area of this hotel is considerable. And it's not just to the village, it's to the wider area, it's along the whole of the south coast, and it's certainly to the, you know, to the south end. Many people have been there over time. So I would not support refusal of it, but I would like to see some mitigation measures taken to actually tone it down, adjust it slightly, and to ensure that the phases 2, 3, 4 rolling forward are closer to or very similar to. It may well be that even the hand tiles, if that was felt, you know, could be changed in future to flatbed or other different times once the rest of the development is underway. But I certainly could not vote to refuse this because I think the economic impacts and the economic problems that refusal would give could be detrimental to the area.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Power.
I think as a committee, our duty is to consider this application in light of what was approved in 2015. not to look at what's happened in the intervening space. That is a matter for other areas of the council, but as our committee, we have to decide this application on its merits. And as Councillor Pearce said, the decision in 2015 was a very finely balanced one. Do we think that this merits our support in light of what we decided in 2015 and the extra bulk and size and impact on neighbours? And I think we have to think very hard about that. Yes, there's an economic benefit from hotels. What we don't want is a Costa Brava style development, which might bring enormous benefits for HomeCo if you had a 10-storey block of a hotel there, but it would do enormous damage to the area. And we're trying to look after and protect what we have. And I think we have to make a decision in light of that and bear in mind that whatever we approve is not to damage the area that we're seeking to protect.
Thank you, Councillor Panel. Councillor Abbott.
Thank you. I want to talk about Davians after this. I assume, though, that whereas they could have been built better, they're going to be, it could be a condition that they would be covered by planting. I think I don't get this exactly, but I wonder whether the lower rooms have contributed to the height of this end. I don't think the lower rooms are a great issue. On the height, this is for phase 1, and I don't see why the other phases couldn't be made to conform with some dire warning to the owner that the height must be in agreement with the 2015 height, even if this southern phase of phase 1 was left as it is. I liked Councillor Foss's questions to the two speakers, and I was quite surprised by the South Hewish Parish Council's response. I had been expecting them to say that they didn't like this. In fact, when you read page 60 of the report, it is written in a way which is quite regular in business writing. It starts with the most recent 9th of April 2021, but it ends, you read down through the page, and it ends their section with they object, but actually they don't object. They support this, as it says at the top, the most recent contribution from South Hewish Parish Council. And that was clear from their representation here. They want this to go ahead. For me, a change, this compromise of a change in position could be that those roof tiles were altered. But with the weight of opinion on other things, keeping a business going, economic advantage, the value of a hotel at that place, I wouldn't go along with anything more catastrophic than that one change. In fact, if it needs somebody to say the other proposal.
So you would propose approval.
Thank you.
Yes, so you're proposing approval, which is opposite to the opposite recommendations. And Helen and Councillor Reid will second that. Councillor Hodgson.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I wonder how much we've kind of strayed from thinking about what our own officers have said in terms of landscape and impact on AMB. And it's very clear for them that, you know, the objection specialists will have harmful effects on this sensitive, protected landscape. In terms of what we've been talking about, in terms of the economics of this, a lot of these major properties that work along our edge, so thank you very much, are based on the fact that we have, you know, a relatively unspoilt beauty. And if we start to chip it away, and you know, this isn't chipping it away, this is quite a big impact on it, you know, is by this much bigger building. I think that, you know, we ignore these landscape expressions of view, as well as the AMB is also objective. I think we ignore that at our peril, because all we, you know, where do we stand next time somebody comes on with an application for a big, you know, big hotel? They cite, well, you were quite happy with that one around the corner, or even the Lantern Hotel can come back and say, well, we want a nice big one as well. You know, it's like, you know, we've got our policies. I mean, and as you know, I don't agree with all of them. But I do think that this, you know, having somebody stand before us and tell us that it was like, showed us half a room, that, you know, it's that much difference, and we're hearing it's 83 centimetres. I think it's actually sort of, you know, well, at best it's worrying that it's perhaps that's what's going to happen next. It's going to, you know, the next bit of carrying, oh, we didn't realise it's just a big, you know, and it's, but the impact on that view and the landscape there is massive. And that's what I was saying. And I would say, I actually would support refusal, but if it goes to the other way, because I think it's probably all of it, you know that you're affecting somebody individually, or it feels like it is. The cost of actually, if that whole thing plays out across the 4 phases and it's that much bigger, I would suggest it might cost an awful lot more to realise all of that and to take it down at the moment as much as they need to. So they won't need to take all of that, but take it as much as they need to actually bring it down to scale and then carry on as they were. Because they must have actually costed out economically the whole way that it goes forward. And at the moment, these bits aren't intended to raise much as I would have thought anyway, because most of it was for the owner's own accommodation. So I would offer that as a kind of a view on the economics. And I'm no economics expert, but it just seems to me we're looking at very big figures here. And I think it's going to cost them more. I think it's like more in favour actually.
Just anyone else?
Just one point to make. There's been a lot of discussion around almost as though what was approved in 2015 was not approved and we're approving that now. Yeah. There is already, if you look at the proposal that was agreed by this committee in 2015, it's a substantial change. And there has always, the hotel has always had an impact in Hope Cove. Just by its nature, its size, its spread. And it is within the built environment of Hope Cove. It is part of it, and we'll see changes around the whole area. I think what we need to bear in mind is that what we're looking at is a small part, which is, that's the rooms, I think has been discussed here by Councillor, and we're seeing a roof height changed as well. But what you've got to remember is that there is an approval for a substantial change through there, which would be different, and that's approved. And what we're talking about on this end is a tile colour or a tile type, and you know, again, they're bringing 25, 52, 85, but the rest of it, you know, it is still largely changing, and will be, you know, would have impact, and it is agreed.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for that, Councillor. I think that's a very, very good point. That, in a way, the massive impact on the AOMB and the visual impact was decided at the last application. I mean, if you look at it now, I don't know if there's an old picture of what it was and what it will be, if it was done as approved. That doesn't help. So that's what is approved. Now, I mean, when that came to committee report, I could not bring myself to support that.
I'm absolutely horrified.
I know.
I'm sorry, but
I didn't
what
vote
were you
against.
thinking of?
That's been sent in by an objector, so I can't vote at that.
Okay, but I mean, what we're talking about, that is not going to be far off what has been approved already in 2015. And what we're talking about is, I don't know how high that is from going from the right-hand end as you look at it to the top of the ridge height. That's probably, I don't know, 16, 17 metres.
I can help you out with that.
Sure. Looking at that view, which is all that we're looking at the moment, phase 1, actually on the original application gave us lower than the rest of it.
Yes, that's what I was looking at.
It is, but that's also the angle on it. So
that's 37.2. That's 20. That.
16, 17 metres.
Yeah.
So that's what's been approved, 16 or 17?
No, No, that's what's been built.
Okay, so what was approved?
What's been approved?
15, 16.
No.
What I'm saying is that what we are discussing here.
What's been approved? I can't seem to zoom in, but it's 23.55 is the ground floor level, roughly what's been approved. So then the top of that is 37.2 is minus 82. So 36.4. So it's about, what's been approved is about 13 metres. What's been built, including the extra floor below, but then you've also got the height of the gabion basket, which are above head height. So the actual mass now is 17, just over 17 metres plus the gabion basket.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is the ridge height. So if you look at that, if the ridge height from the bottom to the top is what I'm trying to say is that what's been approved and the look of it is where all the damage to the visual impact is done. What we're deciding here is whether it should be allowed to go an extra 80 centimetres higher. And is that, do people feel, I mean, I know that the officers objected to it last time. I couldn't vote for it last time because but I do think members have to take into account that we've already approved a pretty, well, let's say not the most beautiful. Yeah, no, I will. Well, yeah.
I'm not taking responsibility for that.
No, but that's already been approved. So what you'll decide, no, not by me either. What you'll decide is whether an extra 80 centimetres is enough. Does that increase the impact that much to make it not acceptable?
Can I also say, I know that it's probably, there's probably reasons for it, but we've hardly talked about the poor bungalow behind at all, really. I know she's had her bit, but
yeah, no, well, I mean,
could she not get access to the roof?
Yeah, no.
She could have a little bridge.
No, look, the thing about it is that officers recommended refusal on the impact on that house last time, and we took the view that the economic and social benefit to the local community was enough to outweigh that. And what you could argue is that to some extent, I know that obviously it's higher than it should have been, but is it that much higher to make that much difference to things? So those are the things I think you should be balancing up.
It does, it
Sorry,
makes a huge difference.
I would just like to just remind members that within DEV 25 policy, we're looking to conserve land as the A and B. I think Councillor Pearson did it really well when she said that there had been a lot of concern in the original application about the adverse impacts that the development can have. You clearly felt sure about making that decision. This takes the form, the scale, and the massing beyond that. Additional adverse impacts. So from a policy point of view, it is impossible to support in those two character terms.
So would you have supported it last time?
Absolutely not.
No, well it was.
And that's where
material
officers were
consideration.
consistent all the way
Yeah, no,
through.
that's why this committee, the fact that they did the material consideration.
But this is above and beyond.
Yeah, no, that's right. No, I accept that. But what I'm saying is that I understand that, and if you look at it, and this is what I'm saying, it's like the damage has been done already. And then this is a slightly, little bit more damage, but it's not, what you can't do is say, it's as it is, or it's as it's going to be. We've already got that in, and if it doesn't work, you can rest assured that it, maybe it is sold, maybe it isn't sold, but a developer will be working from what they've already got permission for in 2015. So, the idea that we're going to suddenly go back to as it was, that's not going to happen.
Chair, I think you do in that process also look at that when we're talking about that impact is we do need to consider the impact on the property behind. Because when it was originally approved, it was approved for its economic benefit, but the impact is different now on the property behind. So you do need to have to consider whether that change there is still an economic benefit to it, if that's the way you're going, that you have got the rates, that there are exceptional circumstances why you override the AOG. And on the, a little bit of reference made right at the beginning about outlook and view, and I think it's very good, if I may, just a very good sort of explanation of that in planning section, not wind farm, but not on this, but it said, no individual has the right to a particular view, which is the point that's been made, but there comes a point when by virtue of the proximity, size and scale of a given development, a residential property will be rendered so unattractive a place to live that planning commission should be refused. I'm not telling you that to influence review, I'm just saying that the test of what would be unattractive and what would affect the outlook so much that there should be a refusal is an objective test, and it is not new, but I'd like you just to understand view, right of view, which becomes like, and the adequate issue, which is what's in.
Thank you. Councillor Pringle.
The point I was trying to make was the plans that were agreed in 2015, and the lady who spoke first, they said they told her that there was plans for the hotel. So she would have gone and looked at those plans, and there's a significant difference to what there was in those plans to what there is now. Those, the things that, what do you call it, the things at the bottom?
Gables.
Gabions.
Gabions.
Were they in the original?
No.
You know, there's significant things that have happened to it that weren't in those plans, but the people who would have bought the house.
No, absolutely right. No, you're absolutely right.
So that was the point I was trying to make.
Yeah, and well made.
And retrospective, now we're deciding on whether the plans are already been reached.
Okay.
I'm afraid I have to disagree with Councillor Pringle.
You're allowed to.
Because something like the unmentionable Gabions has nothing to do with this. I've forgotten your words. Outlook. Because they're on the other side. The only thing that's affecting the outlook is the gable end, and that if you were to take 80 centimetres off that gable end on one of those views out of the young lady's
house, would it make that much difference?
Those are the words I want.
Chairman,
So that's what you have to decide on.
can I ask a question? The lady made much of the fact that she bought the house and one thing and another. Was that roof finished when that auction happened?
No. Sorry, Councillor Pearce, I'll bring in very.
About the game of baskets, can I just make one point on those? The front of the garden at Westview has been completely hollowed out into a wall. And there are gaming baskets all the way down there, down onto the car park where it's been hollowed out. So whilst they're not looking out onto the gaming baskets around the front, I think their property has been severely, well, it hasn't been curtailed, but right up to their boundary, there are these gaming baskets which drop down, well, probably at least the height of the door, and probably half as much again, down onto the car park in front of their garden. Perhaps you didn't see that when we went on the car park.
Yeah, we didn't see that.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Okay, members. Now we've had a proposal for approval.
Refusal.
Was the refusal seconded?
Refusal.
So the other side was, yeah, you're absolutely right. So we've had a recommendation for refusal as per the recommendation, and that was proposed by Councillor Brown, seconded by Councillor Pringle. So can I see all those in favour of refusal, please? And all those against refusal? And I'm abstaining on Any more
I'll
abstentions?
stay, yeah, please, I'm sorry, I can't decide. And it wasn't me what did it.
Yeah.
Yes, it's not, sorry, that's what I'm trying to say.
Right, then it had Councillor Abbott proposed approval, which is against officer recommendation. That's seconded by Councillor Reid.
Chairman, before we go on, before I think we'll vote against, I want some mitigation.
Okay. Can I ask officers? I think, members find themselves in present with this, they don't want to refuse it, but they don't want to approve it as is. They'd like there to be some, for example, the railings have got to go. You can have retractable railings or railings that you put down, and then when someone's up there, you put them up, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
The colour of those slates has got to be mitigated, they've got to be changed. So there are things like that. So how would we be allowed to approve it by putting those? Are there conditions that we can put in that would allow that?
Those details are all shown on the plans. You will be approving those plans.
Okay.
Right.
So is there any way that we can?
Sure.
Yeah, of course.
And while I discuss with the status report, it's too much further. I think the only way to do it there's two options. You either set out quite clearly what it is you're seeking to change, then keep yourself service, and then defer the application until those plans come in. You see, alternative, which I think is probably just is that what I would suggest if it's approved, there could be a delegated approval because we want to sort out conditions in any event with whoever proposes seconded, yourself and the board members. The other alternative is approved subject to receipt of plans that show whatever changes you want to be seen. They are then looked at by the officers in conjunction with the members who will sign off the delegated approval conditions and deal with that way. And it comes back here if those plans, for whatever reason, or the changes you're seeking cannot be achieved.
You lost me a bit on that.
Yeah, I don't know.
The first one I get that we defer it.
I think we need to have an understanding of what changes you are seeking.
Well, if I explicit, the railings, the colour of the slates.
Colour of the slates to what?
Tiles.
Tiles. Well, I don't know. I mean, there needs to be some kind of.
Did we know
Well,
the original colour that we proposed? Was the one that was actually coloured? Was it red or was it not red?
It's in my report. My house got my report now, so I don't know what page it's on. Marley smooth red.
What is being approved is a smooth, a red, plain, smooth tile. Right. What hasn't been approved is the shape and the way of the tiles was a more plain, flat tile is what should improve.
It's more the colour that's the issue. The colour is the issue.
I don't know if you can dull the colour.
Yeah, you can, we've already.
Sorry? You don't think?
I think the Marley plain red tile is a dull red.
Yeah.
It's a darker red. It's like the ones on the neighbouring buildings.
Okay, so we want a different coloured
Yes.
slate, tile, I should say.
Block colour, marley.
I'm not so in whether they're curly or not. I don't think that makes that much difference. Councillor Abbott?
The continuation of the height to the north.
Yeah. I think that's right. I think that we're very concerned that this doesn't mean that the whole thing sort of leapfrogs on top of each other, and that we must have, that it can't do that. It's got to stay, and that's it. Now that is going to cause some engineering issues, but they've got to do that.
I think that message can be heard loud and clear. I don't believe you can put that on condition of this application because it's outside. This application is simply for. Yes, within the web. I don't think you can put a condition.
Okay, that's fine. Acceptable.
The message that.
Well, we could have a clear informative that the council would not, that is unlikely to support any increase in height.
Without predetermining any subsequent application that came in with an increased height on the agreed plan for 2015, it'd be very unlikely we support that.
I'm sure, Chairman, within the modern days, there's something spray.
This is the colour of the tile. Yeah, no, agree with that. Agree. Anyway. Right. Well, we've now looked at, I think we may vote, well, I know this is for approval, and that had been seconded. I think, was it? No, Helen, yes, that's re-seconded it. But it made in the planning officer says that the best way forward to achieve the mitigation that I think we all want would be to defer, and then.
I think my view is, and Mr. Andrew just reminded me something that's very misunderstood. Realistically, if we get additional plans in that remove the toilet, other changes to the room, we ought to re-advertise those to give people an opportunity to make comment that we really should. So I think the best way to do would be to defer it, but when it comes back, I would be very clear that we really only, there's a clear indication that they're the only things we're looking at, and that's the only things we shouldn't be talking about on the platform.
I request that we have some proper landscaping.
Yeah, I think that's right, for the gradient below, yeah.
Yeah.
Councillor Reed.
Well, you say remove the tile, but could we look into finding if there's something you can?
Colour them with.
Sorry, if I say remove what it means, what I meant is an alteration to it.
Right.
Because I think that's what members are saying.
If members have that, I'd like to move deferral, which will overcome your approval. And it's on those, so I think that's 3 grounds actually. The railings, the tiles, and the landscaping. And also a very clear message.
I wasn't asleep, I was speaking.
It's not good. Are we all okay with that?
Yeah, like tiles makes great.
You all right with that? Yes, exactly. So,
Do we want to talk about conditions now, or leave that until?
we can leave that until it comes back. Okay, so I will move deferral. That's been seconded by Councillor Foss. We have all those in favour of deferral, please. And those against? Thank you. So that application is deferred for those 3. Thank you very much, members. That's very long.
I think there's a final thing outside because what is the word suggesting deferral? I've never seen it before.
Okay, right. Okay, 10 minutes break.
Yeah.
Members, leave it 20 past 4.
Oh, God, are we?
Yes.
We are now, we're live. Welcome back, everyone. Thank you all very much. We'll now move on to agenda item G. So that is the old Budgeon site, .net, former Brutus Centre, .net. Over to you, Ms. Hackman.
Yeah. So I'm not going to propose to go through in detail the presentation I did last time because you've all seen it at the last meeting. So I'm going to whiz through it, and there's a couple of plans on there that members asked for last time, which I will pause on, but basically I'll do it relatively quickly, hopefully. So it's obviously the former Brutus Centre in Paul Street, Totnes. The application is for 42 retirement homes and 2 residential units and associated landscaping and parking. That's the site, I'm very aware of that. Google Maps, and that's the constraints. That's the site outlined in red with the listed buildings and conservation area boundaries. This is a site proposal. Parking at the front remains well, it'd be privately owned, but it would be a public car park paved straight as it is currently, and these parking spaces at the back for the residents. It's just a 3D view of the building, so there's a space in the middle, the meeting space for the residents. So these are the images I wanted to show you, which have been submitted since. I think some members asked for the existing building to be put on a plan, same with the proposed building. So this is the north elevation, which is the elevation that faces towards the residential development. This is the east elevation, which is the elevation which effectively from Station Road is what you can see. This is the west elevation, and this is the south elevation. You can see in all of those images, there are elevations where the existing building is bigger, and there are elevations where the proposed building is slightly bigger. So these now images are the ones that we looked at last time. I haven't mentioned in the report, but the images, the images that you see here are actually verified, so they are accurate and they can be sort of measured against, if you like, if they're not built, if it's not built in accordance with the plan, one of the issues previously. So that's the Station Road. That's looking from Paul Street towards the development down the Snicket. These are the retail units, just the proposed retail units with the stonework around them. And this is, if you were standing to the left of the oak tree, you would be looking through a gap, and that's the view proposed from there. I think members also asked whether or not there was an ability for a refuse vehicle to turn around in the area to take refuse away. The planning report refers to the reference to the waste disposal strategy, which members will now be aware of, and a refuse vehicle can come into the area and pick up the refuse and leave. Okay, so in my view, since the last meeting, clearly the affordable housing contribution was an issue, and obviously design and heritage was the issue that we also went to committee with last time. We didn't discuss that last time because the affordable housing was obviously much more important to members, and we deferred it until this meeting. Since this meeting, since the previous meeting rather, the applicants come forward with an offer of £410,000 without prejudice basis, because there's still a pending informal hearing. We've delayed the informal hearing, but there is a pending hearing about the previous application, so it's without prejudice to that. £110,000 has been good. They have actually taken into account this time what's called vacant building credit, which is in the MPPF and was issued in 2014 through a ministerial statement. And the process actually allows for the existing building footprint to be reduced, to be taken off the proposed footprint, which reduces the affordable housing contribution from 30%, which is what our policy says, to 18%. Got Tom here again, who has reviewed that for us and can answer any questions you have them after the presentation. Trying to think of anything else I need. Oh, the other issue which was raised at the previous meeting was with regard to parking spaces. Obviously, we're losing 25 parking spaces on that car park. Members wanted me to give you a percentage. I will give you a percentage, but I'll just tell you the figures. At the moment, we have 807 car parking spaces, public car parking spaces owned by the council in Totnes. We also have the ones that we're on the site are public spaces but privately owned, and there's obviously 50 currently. So if you take 25 off that total, you get a 3% reduction in the parking within the town. And I think that's all I need to say at the moment, unless there's any questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Alexander. Any questions, comments? Yeah, Councillor Hodgson.
Thank you. Yeah, so in terms of parking, just being aware then, how has there been an assessment of the parking need of the property? Because 25 places are going to be lost. 25 places remain. And if they've got 42 residents, plus potentially at this time, half of those will have a visitor, plus there's going to be staff on the site. What's the parking for all those people who met this? I know there's parking at the back, but how much parking is allowed for them?
There's 14 spaces at the back of the building for the development and 25 public parking spaces at the front of the development. So that's all that's there.
So just to get those figures correct, then it's less than one parking space allowed per resident and staff, and I think so it's like it's less actually about 0.5 or something, is it? In total, yeah, that's staff
14
and allowed visitors.
Probably a little bit less than that.
Yeah, well, it's a great parking space, but it means it's going to impact on the town, basically, potentially.
Yeah, the idea that in the town should mean that people won't need cars so much.
Sure.
Yeah, well, that's the two people yes, Councillor. Yes, yeah, Councillor Powell.
Yeah, just a couple of small points. Yeah, in a couple of places in the report it refers to Bugdens. I think you mean Budgeons. Perhaps that could just be amended in pages 90 and 97. There's a discrepancy about the contribution in the introduction. It talks about a contribution of £410,000 for affordable. Later on, it talks on page 97. It says £400,000, and also that the officers assume this is acceptable to the town council. I think it's rather dangerous to assume anything's acceptable to the town council without asking them. I'll be interested to hear what if we've got any further than assuming what they think.
We haven't got any further in terms of the assumptions I made, no.
Thank you. Well, we've got the deputy mayor at Totnes Town Council who will put us in.
And the deputy chair planning committee.
Okay, so we'll know that. We'll ask them on that.
And it's 410, not 400.
Yes, so thank you for pointing that out.
Thank you.
Councillor Post.
Yeah, it's only a little bit more from the chair. Remember, we talked about this about. Is there anything in there marked on the spot where we will use buildings from to make sure we don't lose?
I think this house standard did show that on one of the slides. Right. So, yeah, if you go back to that, just to confirm. Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah. So and that's been confirmed that that's an accurate picture.
Yeah, and in the design and access statement, I haven't given you all the detail, but in the design and access statement that was submitted, there is a specific paragraph. I think I've written some of it in the report, which basically identifies exactly where the photograph was taken from.
Brilliant.
So that you can then use
Thank you very much. No, that's very useful. Councillor Lott.
Yeah, there's a couple of points. Can you clarify the parking needs, that will be a public parking, sort of shopping type parking, and it won't be permits for that parking area.
It is designed as being a public car park, but will be privately owned as it is currently. So it's currently privately owned, and it will remain in that way. I did have a message from Councillor Sweet, who asked if it would be possible to make the sort of control that car park, if you like, to make sure it stays as a public car park. So I will propose that perhaps we could add an additional condition which would achieve that into the future.
Okay, that's brilliant. The other thing, the retail units, which I like the sound of, is there any way that they can be protected, or is it proposed protection of retail? Because obviously they could, use classes change to be office or anything like that, and obviously the retail is supposedly a draw, and that's part of it. Is there a way that we can condition that or keep that?
Yeah, I propose a condition to retain the retail units as retail unless otherwise agreed in writing with the planning authority.
Okay, brilliant. The other thing is there was some discussion about materials and the cladding. And, has that been worked out yet, or is that still to come forward?
Still to come, but there are specific conditions to deal with all of the materials. Where the materials join, sometimes it looks a bit crass if you don't specify it. So there are a number of conditions that will ensure that we get absolute details on all the materials and all of the elevations, the details of the balconies, the detail of the oil window over the shop units.
The other one is on biodiversity, and unless I've missed it, I've gone right way through the problem. There's no indication of the inclusion of Swift boxes into the development.
Yes.
In an area like Totnes, they would be key to that species of bird, so there would be an opportunity.
There are bird boxes proposed and bat boxes, and the biodiversity metric that they submitted indicated that they were increasing the biodiversity on the site by 25%, which our SPD requires 10%. So they're over and above what our SPD requires.
Obviously, the sighting of those boxes on the plan.
I don't think they're actually identified on the plan, but we are asking for a landscape and implementation plan, so that we can.
And that will be included in that.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any more? Lee?
Just in terms of the affordable housing contribution of 410,000, how affordable housing is that supposed to be paid for?
Steve.
I think the current average price for a house in Scotland is about 330,000. So we're looking at providing unaffordable housing outside of the site.
If you were buying on site, it would buy you 4 houses, 4 properties on site. What we see we could do with that money is we could potentially seek to purchase some exception sites, and normally if you're looking at 10 grand a plot, so £10,000 a plot, then you could you could assist in enabling another 40 houses from that money. Does that make sense?
Not really, because I think you get much for 10,000.
And that's a plot. You would then pass them to a housing association to do the actual build, but you would be assisting them in bringing forward another 40 houses. If that makes sense.
I hear you, but I don't agree with you.
Yeah,
I was going to say, I think we had quite a heated debate about this last time, and I think there's a misconception about just how much money is going to come from affordable housing contributions, because what you're looking at is not how much that money would buy, how many houses that would buy. What you're looking at is the difference between what the developer would sell that house for on the open market and what they would sell for at an affordable rate, which is a very, very much smaller figure.
Yeah.
So what you've got to do is take out of they've got their cost to build it. So you're looking at what reduction in profit they have, which may only be 10 or 20,000 pounds per house. So as you say, it could be the equivalent of, quite a number of affordable houses if you're allowing for that to be where the money comes from.
Yeah. Can I also just come back in on that a little bit about it would not suit us to have an affordable housing need met in that type of development. The rent costs are really high, the service charges are really high for people to be able to afford. So getting a housing management company to just manage those affordable units, we can't get them to do that. It would be very impossible. So to take money to be able to use it for better purposes elsewhere, working with the town council, our local housing providers, that is the best use of that cash.
Thank you. Right, in which case we shall move on to the speakers. Mr. Van Aert.
She's behind you.
Don't mind, I've asked to be seated, just so.
Yeah, that's sure, sir. And just say, because it's a major application, you've got up to 5 minutes. And then when you've finished, members of the committee may wish to ask you questions. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you for hearing me. I'm Jan van Aert, resident on Station Road in Totnes. I own and run a small food retail business on Totnes High Street. I'm here today to object to Churchill's amended proposal for 3 reasons. First, the large and irreversible impact it will have on a sensitive conservation area. Second, the negative contribution it will make to access to affordable housing in Totnes, and in my view, inadequate S106 contributions offered as mitigation. Third, and not least, the detrimental impact it will have on our high streets independent businesses by removal of 25 critical short-term parking spaces. My first point, the proposed development is simply too massive. It will despoil what makes Totnes a uniquely attractive place to live and visit. The plans under review call for a vastly increased footprint over the current building and addition of a 4th story. It is claimed that the height will be 11 meters. How that works for 4 stories when the standard doorway is 980 millimeters is a mystery. The artist's impression Churchill have furnished, in my view, and that of fellow resident Craig Hallam of the firm Hallam & Hallam, assumes more artistic license than you ought to allow. Anyone standing in front of the Conservative Club on Station Road can confirm that with their own eyes, and I challenge you to do so. It's at best unclear how the proposed building will actually look. I strongly suggest you have the artist's impression verified by a competent third party, if not already done, using accurate computer-aided design before reaching your final conclusion. Companies like Churchill are cookie-cutter developers and tweak their existing design to save on development costs. I expect you'll find the final product, in reality, will look more like their development, Fitsford Lodge in Tavistock. And I ask you to imagine that building in the ancient heart of Totnes. You can Google it, Fitsford Lodge. To my second point, none of the 42 proposed retirement flats improve the availability of affordable housing to working families in Totnes. To boot, their realization would permanently remove an option to build affordable housing in Totnes at this site. Based on current prices at their Torquay site, the market value of these flats will be at least 12 to 15 million pounds, and I say at least. The contribution of 400,000 pounds, if they're allowed to proceed with 42 units, is totally inadequate. It should be a 7-figure number. To my third point, last and certainly not least, the impact on Totnes livelihoods. So far, Totnes has bucked the much lamented trend of the dying UK high street, thanks to our fortunate location and hard work of independent small business owners, supported by a vibrant local community and engaged town council. This is, however, a precarious and hard-earned success, and this development threatens to smother it. Our high street, like any other, does 2/3 of its trade on 1/3 of the days. Fridays, weekends, and school holidays. That's 150 days a year that really matter. And on these days, all parking in Totnes is fully utilized. And it's the peak capacity and utilization that matters to us traders, not the average. Further, not all parking is created equal. The 50 short stay spaces at this site are absolutely critical to the viability of businesses on our high street, in particular those between the middle of 4th Street and St Mary's Church, all small independents like me. They provide essential access to families with children and older shoppers from surrounding villages, plus people with special mobility needs. It cannot park at the other end of town. Their only viable alternative are a few dozen short stay spaces on 4th Street and High Street, which I repeat are already fully utilized on these peak shopping days.
Remove 25 of them and you're removing the opportunity for roughly 100 vehicles to visit Totnes on these 150 key days. If each one carried 2 people and each of them spent £25 only, that's 5,000 a day taken off our high street. Times 150, that's £750,000 of trade loss every year in perpetuity. Bear in mind, shops like mine break even on a few £100 a day. £750,000 is many multiples of our yearly turnover. Loss of these particular 25 spots will be a disaster for businesses like mine, sucking vital economic oxygen out of our town centre. And the 60-odd so-called bastard shoppers the development adds to our demographic will in no way compensate for the loss of trade. Make no mistake, this will be a huge blow to many local businesses and the vibrant centre of commerce Totnes has been for centuries. This is a major planning decision for good reason. It will have a systemic impact on our town's retail and hospitality. I beg you, consider with care the impact of this decision and the numbers I've given you before deciding. My family's livelihood and that of many others will depend on it. The family that owned Churchill will be just fine. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Members, any questions? Councillor Hodgson.
Thank you very much. That was a really clear statement that I know is echoed around Totnes, so thank you for that. You referred to the loss of 25 parking spaces. I don't know if you heard the conversation that was going on here just before you came in, where I asked about how much parking that was, which is left, 25 places, how much that would be straight or to be used by the people in there. Potentially, it could be a loss of 50 parking spaces if they're all utilised by the private, if they have the option to do. Do you think that would double the impact, or is it sort of
That is my fear. By mathematical definition, it would double the impact if that happened, and there are precedents for that. But even if that were not to happen, the impact is huge. And I find the framing of 800 spaces in town completely wrong in this decision, because to shops like mine, let's say within a 5-minute walking distance of that spot, particularly those depending on families or older shoppers, parking spots over at Victoria Street or on the other side at the Leachwell Gardens are not relevant for pop-and-shop shopping. You're essentially taking out half or more of the relevant pop-and-shop short-term parking at the centre of town, not 3%. Please frame it correctly.
Any other members? No? Thank you very much, sir. You've now got Mr. Shannon. Hi.
Good afternoon. Everyone can hear me at this kind of volume?
Yes.
That's good, thank you. The applicant has engaged with your specialists, the Southwest Design Review Panel, statutory consultees in the local community, and plead their assistance. The proposal is before you with a recommendation for approval. As we are aware, the site, which was the former Budgeon store, has been left vacant for a number of years with the privately owned car park continuing to be made available for public use. Part of the site falls within the secondary retail area, and the proposal complies with policy of DEV 18 by providing 2 smaller retail units designed for use for independent retailers, which are characteristic of Totnes Town Centre. The joint local plan policy allows for other main town centre uses where they encourage footfall and support the main functions of the rest of the town centre. The applicant has, following community consultation, sought to retain as much public parking as viably possible while seeking to positively redevelop the site. Whilst there is no planning policy basis requiring retention of public use on site, it is acknowledged that maintaining it will continue to support the vitality and viability of Totnes Town Centre. Proposed development of retirement apartment will also support the vitality and viability of the town centre as residents of this form of accommodation are reliant upon local shops and facilities. A recent report related to later living found that people living in a retirement development of this size would generate £550,000 spending per year on the local high street. The applicant worked hard with the Southwest Design Review Panel and planning and heritage specialists to ensure that the proposal is of a high quality design which reflects the architectural and historic heritage of Totnes Town Centre. The proposed scheme has taken reference of its surrounding historic buildings in terms of its layout and form and use of the palette materials including stone, render, slate hanging that are characteristics of the town. The proposal that has also been designed to include some modern architectural elements and features intended to be of its time but to add to the richness and the intro of the parking section of the town centre. Care has also been taken to improve those areas of the public realm within the site to provide an easier and visually pleasing route in the public car park of Wall Street for residents and pedestrians. With the assistance of your specialists, we consider that the proposed scheme will remove a negative building within the town and will replace it with a mixed-use, vibrant building that positively improves the conservation area and setting adjacent listed buildings, preserving views of St Mary's Church Tower. Like the County Council's Climate Emergency Declaration 2019, the applicant sought the sustainability at the centre of its design. The proposal develops a fabric-first approach to the building, meaning a lower requirement for energy, and it provides its own on-site renewable energy through the use of photovoltaic cells, resulting in over a 20% reduction in carbon uses beyond current building regulations. The proposal complies with policy DET 32. The proposal will also provide 2 electric vehicle charging points for the public use of car park and 4 charging points for residents proposed scheme with other spaces infrastructure ready. The applicants have utilised your arboriculturists and ecologists to ensure the long-term health of the redwood tree and the inclusion of new planting, native landscaping and habitats for refugees. Biodiversity metric calculation provided by the applicant demonstrating that there will be a 35% net gain in biodiversity from the proposed scheme. In respect to the provision of affordable housing, the applicant noted the comments made by the committee at its previous meeting and has increased the offer to 410,000 based on the policy level contribution, taking into consideration the application of local bill for credit. The proposal complied with National Planning Policy Guidance and Policy Dev 8. Policy Dev 8 also supports a mix of housing types as well as older people wishing to retain independence. Joint local plan predates National Planning Policy Guidance, which has introduced one section specifically addressing housing involved with people, stating that it's critical to provide housing for older people. Where there is an identified local need, council should take a positive approach to schemes that look to address the proposal looks to meet the unmet need within the district, which specialist housing tools identify 1,200 sheltered housing units to be provided up to 2035. Retirement housing also have 300 occupied family housing, and it's been identified that each person living in the retirement development saves the NHS and social services £3,500 a year. In conclusion, the mindful of National Planning Policy on Sustainable Development and the Council's Joint Local Plan, I have not dealt with a proposal that meets so many national and local planning policy objectives. Redevelopment previously developed vacant brownfield sites, redeveloping land in a highly sustainable location, living older persons accommodation considers a national and a local need. Policy combines 410,000 contribution to affordable housing, placement of a negative building in the conservation area with a design that is of high quality and will improve the townscape and protect the St Mary's Church. Mixed use redevelopment to independent shops, typical of the town centre, maintaining 25 public parking and disabled spaces at the request of the town council and local community, a net increase in biodiversity by 35%, enhancements to the public realm and footways, and protection and enhancement of the protected redwood tree, and inclusion of on-site renewable energy and switching electric charging points.
Thank you very much, David. Members, any questions? Councillor Hodgson.
Thank you. Yeah, you just made a reference to that there's an estimation it saves huge amount of money per year to the NHS because of providing these houses. So you're suggesting that the people going in would otherwise be impossible. And secondly, in terms of the parking, are you able to confirm that you would not be just allowing those spare parking spaces that remain the same line would become private parking spaces with residence parking schemes for the people on the new build?
If it would be possible to have the site plan, I'll talk about parking in a minute, so we'll get that up. Going back to your first question. Yeah, research has been done.
Who's done the research?
Research has been done by Homes for Later Living, which is independent assessments and surveys carried out for the older persons housing industry, if you like. And they're looking at savings from people moving into this form of accommodation from being in mainstream forms of accommodation where there'll be trip hazards and properties that are not designed for later years. So stairs are the obvious example, maybe positions of things like plug sockets, maybe bathrooms, wet rooms are also seen as a hazard. So there is a direct saving from having people older years in appropriately designed accommodation for them. So part of the saving comes from that. Part of the saving also comes from the fact that you've got a group of people that are within a development. So a healthcare professional or a doctor has got time savings with these types of schemes where they save time by visiting not just one person here and then going over to the other part of town to go and see someone else, so on and so forth. But they can meet 3 or 4 people in the same visit at the same development if they need to. Yeah, so that's sort of where it comes from, and there is time savings from and cost savings from the hospitalisation from these ones. So that's that question. In terms of parking, I think that needs to be clear on 2 bits here. The top area of parking shown, remind me where that those spaces at the top are for the retirement living development. They're based on survey evidence of car ownership and needs and trip generation these schemes generate from across the country. And that level of parking is the same as what's provided at Tavistock. So there's no objection from highways in terms of parking on that. In terms of the public parking down the bottom, as the officer said earlier, the intention with that is to maintain it as it currently is. So it will be public parking maintained and operated by a private management company. Your officer suggests that a condition to ensure that it remains in public use. The applicant wouldn't have any objection to that being imposed on.
Yes, I may just ask another question, Chairman. I raised it at the last meeting. We raised a bit about the waste vehicles, but actually there was a question I raised was where do waste bins go? Because there's going to be a lot of, and we've got a big household, we've got 5 or 6 people now in Totnes. How are you going to cope with that in a tough space?
Yeah, so what we do, you know, your officer's got that before I have. That area marked in blue is an internal refuge room. Now, there are always internal refuge rooms to prevent people this age having to go outside in the winter months. The average occupancy of these types of apartments is 1.3 persons per apartment. And from all the existing plans, we've got a very clear idea of the level of waste generation and recycling that generates. There's a metric we use which comes out for a scheme of this size, this amount of apartments, about 5,000 litres, just over per development. So we've got 6 1,100 euro bins within that, which will cover. You've got collective bins. You've got collective bins that will cover all of it. And just to point out as well, the area marks, there's an area for waste for retail use as well.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question? What's the average cost of one of these units, please?
When you say cost, do you mean
to the end user?
Do you mean price of the units to purchase? Or do you mean sort of service charge?
No, price of the unit.
Price,
and what is the service charge as you brought up?
Price of the unit. I mean, it's not an area of expertise I'm involved with. The other problem with pricing is usually, as a rule of thumb, you're in planning for a year, thereabouts. There's a construction period of about a year before you start selling any apartment. So it's all going to be linked to the market. What we find is because people have to be downsizing, haven't got mortgages at this age group. So most of the price pointing is based on 3 bedrooms and semi-detached properties that they have the ability from the equity in the local market to be able to downsize and move into these and retain equity. So as a price point, if you're looking at a comparison, that's where it's sort of gauged at. In terms of the service charge, there are service charges for these apartments for the upkeep of development, the communal areas, and for obviously the council manager and the cleaning. Typically, and it will vary on the number of units in the scheme, on a scheme of about 40 units, it would be about £55 a week for a 1 bed, and that's probably up to about 70 to 75 for a 2 bed.
Service charge.
But that obviously covers all your building insurance, all those aspects. So the only other bills and the heating, the only other bills that the residents will have is electric to the apartment and council tax That's about it, and obviously,
Right, and so, sorry, you didn't, what was the actual cost of the average apartment in that build?
it's not an area of my expertise, and it wouldn't be sold for 2 to 2.5 years. So it will be market led. But yeah, it would be based on the price point equivalent to 3 bedroom semis is usually where they look to price, because most people are downsizing. I think that's probably about as far as
Okay, thank you.
Any more members? No? Thank you very much, sir. Yeah, Councillor Hendrickson from Thomas Town Council. Close up.
Yes, hello, thank you. Right, I'd like to start by stating our concerns about the building itself. We're very concerned about the bulk and look of the building. It's too domineering for this site, and it's in a conservation area abutting 2 scheduled monuments. The architecture of the surrounding area is impacted by the building. It's large, it's unattractive, and it presents a monolithic appearance among long-established historic surroundings. It's a very sensitive location. This needs to be acknowledged. Although Co-op Budgeon building isn't particularly attractive, it's low-key and doesn't stand out. This building is much larger. Perhaps they consider, if this application continues, perhaps they consider limiting it to 3 floors. That would help if it continues. It's not in the local plan, so it's a speculative build in a site always intended to extend the commercial activities of the high street with easy access in both directions. And while mentioning extension of commercial activities, in our opinion, the retail elements, the shops offered in the plan, are too small and won't provide an attractive and realistic retail offer to the public. That's point 1, the building. Our second point is money. Money for housing, healthcare, and traffic management. In our view, the town needs a minimum S106 offer of £2 million. This is based on, we know that they're going to be making around £15 million from the sale of these apartments. Yes, they've got costs, but that brings them in a profit of 8 to 10 million, whatever, at the end of the day. We would want a minimum of £2 million to compensate for the impact this development will have on healthcare, on traffic, on the loss of much needed parking spaces, and the impact that will have on local businesses. Whereas the affordable aspect of this bill, there's a distinct lack of affordable flats in the development. The 400,000 now offered is better than what they had before, but it's still not enough for us to realistically approach the problem of providing affordable housing anywhere in the locality. A minimum starting figure for this would be £1 million. And incidentally, where is the elsewhere that they state on their application? Elsewhere? Where? It's the most obscure part of the South Hams, perhaps. Any and all monies must go to Totnes, not elsewhere. The problems created by the development are major responsibilities that we for the town must now accept and manage, and we're very concerned about this. Next point, healthcare. Consider the presence of so many extra elderly people, up to 84 in the town. We need S106 money for healthcare. What about access to the local hospital? Have Churchill investigated this? Are they prepared to fund the MIU to ensure it reopens and functions fully? How are the already overstretched health centres and staff going to cope with the inevitable extra demand? Have Churchill planned for this? Or fail? The town needs compensation for this large number of elderly people soon to arrive. Now, on to parking. We need a cast iron guarantee that the 25 public spaces Churchill have made available in their application won't be used by residents of the build, as the loss of these spaces directly affects the footfall and income of traders in Fore and High Street. It will be so easy, and perhaps inevitable, that Churchill will issue permits to the residents when they demand use of those spaces. Removing and cutting off those places from public use means that the town's local elderly residents are greatly disadvantaged, and they're the people who use and need the parking the most. They have mobility issues, and they need easy access to the high street. Their absence will, without doubt, negatively affect trade. Final point, traffic. We would suggest Churchill subsidise Bob the bus or a similar service to transport elderly residents up the hill to the shops to reduce traffic and congestion. We want a scheme that works well for the town. We simply want the best for Totnes. That's it.
Thank you very much, sir. Members, any questions?
Okay, Brixton, the question was raised earlier as to whether or not the town council objects or not to this.
We object. We object.
Okay. Clear?
Yeah. I should have made that clear earlier.
Any more questions? Councillor Rowe.
Yes, so if you don't think this is a good scheme for the former supermarket that was there, what kind of scheme would you like to see there?
I haven't got concern. We planned extensively for uses for the Budgeon building, how we would use it. And we believe that we can make it work and pay for the community.
And what do you have in mind? That's my
But
question.
what about, I have to bring my laptop in and show you the list of activities that we want to plan for that. Could we do that separately? Because I know I've only got 5
No,
minutes.
you can't give me an answer now, that's fine, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Councillor Rowe. Any more questions? No? Thank you very much, Councillor Henderson. Councillor Birch, the 11th member isn't here, but Councillor Sweet has got a statement that Ms. Young will read.
I can't. Oh, we don't have a need in Totnes for housing of this kind, and even if we did, a town centre secondary retail position is not the place for it. I haven't spoken to a single person in and around Totnes who thinks it's a good idea, and nobody can really understand why one of the supermarket chains wasn't interested. Totnes is a busy market town with lots of through traffic. It would seem an ideal space for new shopping or retail premises of some kind. The housing, I would wish it to be mixed housing for local people working in and around the town. That said, if there is to be this kind of housing, then it would need to be 100% protected by the covenants to purchase by and for local people within a radius of Totnes of say 20 miles. Otherwise, I fear all local elderly people will be crowded out by retiring from wealthier areas. We've seen progressively over the year that eventually taken over more extremely through COVID time. 25 parking spaces, in my opinion, are not enough. I'd like to see it increased to 30. They absolutely need to be short stay spaces for shoppers to the town. There cannot be resident public parking, this needs to be guaranteed. There's inadequate residence parking for the amount of dwellings proposed, 15 spaces inadequate for 42 dwellings. Where will any visitors be parked? There are too many dwellings without the infrastructure. There must be a no-deal policy for the short stay parking area. That is to say, anywhere near the Wellingtonian is much like magnificent trees and iconic Totnes landmark. This must be rigorously upheld throughout the build and on into the future. I would like to see public parking remain open throughout any construction period. This car park is vitally important to the commercial well-being of the Totnes, especially for Ford Street, where there is limited on-street parking and people pop and shop, use the bank, post office, etc. Two retail units, all very small, which is a shame. These must be protected by Southend's planning authority, and that they must remain in retail and not able to switch use by the new class lighting restrictions. Any change in use would be subject to rigorous planning control. My understanding of the project was that it was going to be those sprightly older people who would be shopping in town and accessing outdoor space. I don't understand why the building is one block and not split into 2 or 3 separate units. The building is still way too bulky, visually ugly for this historic town centre location. Its contribution is still painfully small, in my opinion. There is still work to be done on the application, unless all comments are very much taken into consideration and subsequent conditions are applied. Overall, on behalf of the Totnes Ward, there is no need for this build, and I do not support the application.
Right. So we shall now move into the debate, members. Obviously, we've seen the application for last time, we deferred it because we wanted to get some details, the picture that Councillor Fox spoke to, Ms. Houselander has shown us. that's good news. And I hope perhaps Hodgson might pass that on to Mr. Van Ass, because he was concerned about that, as we were. But we've been told that is an accurate drawing.
That was on the screen when you were speaking.
Oh, right, yeah, I know.
They've
Yeah.
seen that.
Yeah, because what he said and what we were concerned about too was that we know what artist profession is like,
Yeah.
but we've been told that's an accurate reflection of the plans, as they said. We are absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. No, with you on that. Councillor Rowe.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I don't particularly like the design of this building. However, I do think in principle it is good to have these apartments for older people, because I'm the one living in a village. When I can't drive anymore or I get left on my own, I should be looking to move into Totnes, because Totnes has got everything you need. It's got small shops, it's got cafes where you can meet friends, you can catch a bus, you can get a train, you can go wherever you want, and you don't need a car. So I don't actually buy that we need a lot of car parking spaces, because the only car parking spaces people living there will need is if a friend comes to visit from out of town with a car. So I don't have a problem with that. As far as shops are concerned, we have shops in Fore Street and High Street which are shut at present and not open. So I think that if you've got 40 or 50 older people living there who'd like to wander out, they can wander in and out up and down High Street, Fore Street, because you can get most things that you need in Totnes and on the streets. You don't need to go to the supermarket if you're old. And I, for one, well, if I can't get it in Totnes, I don't tend to go anywhere else. I always shop in Totnes. I've shopped in Totnes pretty much all my life. So I think that the scheme is perfectly acceptable, and I would move approval.
Thank you. Any other members would like to have this? So, Councillor Hodgson.
In the last few years, there's been quite a few developments in Totnes for this particular age group. So, for example, Portable currently has a planning commission for extension. So, some of these villages have got all those new buildings which are currently having their walls rebuilt because they're so badly built. From that, next 2 or 3 phases, there will be potentially a large, I think it's about 200 people, but I may well be wrong there. Big unit anyway, and there's the new development on the other side on Bridgetown facing the Livelihoods, which opened just before COVID. So we've got 2 new, there's 3 altogether buildings which are for this particular age group. And the problem is that it's going to impact on our health services. We haven't had an increase in doctors, we haven't had any new units coming in. As Councillor Hendrickson said, we've got the hospital is still there in Totnes, but it's not been a year now, and it's the chances are that because everybody else won't. So in terms of who's going to look after these people, they might well be kept out of hospital, to quote a man. But actually, sorry, I didn't interrupt you.
Sorry.
Oh, no, sorry. Okay, so I think that that's one issue that's quite important to bear in mind. The other thing is that what we really have need for is the young people to come to these areas. We've got the rising demographic of older people, and the more we build to build this niche market, which is, as the guy just said, since people downsizing, so they've got lots of money, so they're a very easy market to go for. Much more difficult is to try and challenge and meet the needs of young people and young families who are really struggling to get into housing. And the more we change the demographic in Totnes, the less it will be the lovely, diverse, buzzy place that everybody loves at the moment, because it will just be full of, older people. And there's nothing wrong with older people. I'm getting older. I don't pretend otherwise. But, in terms of how we meet the needs of those older people coming in, so parking has been raised as an issue. And maybe we can get around making sure that the 25 spaces left are for people coming in. But I reckon as much as the shops, and to be fair, the shops, Johan and Council Street also runs a business in the town, are both concerned about the impact of this. But for me, one of the really big things about this is the impact on our heritage. I think the heritage impact of this, it's actually spelled out by Historic England and our own specialist. there's a lot of unanswered questions about this. And when you look, I mean, okay, you're looking at a pretty good, well, I think, not that deep, but that's a huge block. That sets a completely new level in Totnes. You're losing a lot of the skyline. Have you got a picture of the current view from there? Where you can actually, so where you can see more of the church, you can see the other bits of the other side of the road. It's more of that sort of like, okay, that's not the most beautiful building itself, and it's good to have that replaced. But it doesn't have to be replaced by a massive monolith, which is effectively what's going in, and is so out of character and out of scale of what we have as that kind of heritage that's gradually organically grown over literally centuries, so it's going back to Saxon times, part of Totnes. So I think that's a really big concern, and I know it's a concern for a lot of people. The affordable housing, as I said earlier about what's being delivered here, the affordable housing actually offers 410 grand, which if you're lucky would buy 1.5 apartments or 1.5 houses in Totnes at the moment. I calculated it up, there's 42 units, the guy said, it's about 40. It's 42 on the thing, you should actually know that. 42, if we say that there should be out of that 30%, it's 14 houses. If we calculate them up at say 235, which is what we said, about 3.3 million contribution to housing. And I think to accept 410 grand is an insult to this council. It's absolutely outrageous that should be offered. And okay, so it's a high flyer, it's going to cost 55 to 60, 70 pounds a week services. That's intended for people on a high income. That's not cheap. That's not cheap. That's really expensive. The water costs and things, but electricity prices going up. They're not going to be cheap to live in. If you calculate it up further and say maybe what the average price for a house might be in a couple of years, which the house prices in Scotland are going up, we could be looking at that we could be entitled to say like 4.9 million as a contribution, and that might be some of that affordable housing that our JLP is designed to try and produce. What we're doing is we're just allowing ourselves to be over a barrel on this. As much as I like so many other people want to not have to keep looking at that horrible dead building and supermarket, whatever going in there, but I think we've got to really look after the retail, really got to look after the heritage, or we've really got to look after meeting our affordable housing needs. And that's making sure that our health services can carry on. I think that's important too. I mean, this morning I was at Heritage Suppliers late here. They just had it cancelled that their vaccinations weren't going ahead today because they haven't got the NHS staff to come and do it. So there's a problem already. Thank you for listening to me. I know I've gone on a bit.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. It's very important on this, step from there. I mean, of course, you're concerned about this. Councillor Brown.
I'm just going to say that I'd like to second Councillor Red's proposal
for approval.
Can I just repeat what I said about the mathematics of the affordable housing? It's a fallacy. We're not. If there are a number of affordable houses, they're not going to give them away. The calculation is based on the difference between what they would get on the open market and what they would get as affordable homes, and that's a very different figure to you can't equate that number of homes adds up to that many million, because those houses aren't going to be given away. They've got to be built at cost, and people will pay less than the market value. I don't know how much less than the market value at the moment, is it?
20%.
20%.
That's all of it.
So you're looking at 20% less than that.
So the calculations that Councillor Hodgson did, that's about 650,000. But that's not taking into account the vacant building credit.
Yeah.
So instead of getting 30%, we only get 18%.
Yeah.
I mean, our hands are tied, but I mean, I totally agree with. I mean, it's totally unacceptable. It's not solving our. It's not dealing with the housing need in Totnes one little bit. Anyway.
And if I could just add, I think we are in a very difficult position. One application on this site has already gone to appeal. A lot of the objections that were raised over that one have now been withdrawn. I think we are in a difficult position, and I think having got this far, I think it would be unfortunate if we now turned it down.
Fair enough. Councillor Abbott.
Thank you. We've had a professional's calculation of how much should be awarded, and we seem to be getting that. So thank you, Mr. Westrope, for providing those figures, and I can't see that we can do anything more about it. Budgeons has been empty for a long time, and no one else has come up with a plan for development. So I think this is currently available. And as for the NHS, it's not an issue for local government. That's the way people vote central government. Will need to be addressed by you separately to this meeting.
Ms. Hassan, you want to
So I
say?
just wondered if you wanted Tom, as he's come along, to talk about the affordable housing contribution.
Yeah, I think that might be helpful actually. Yeah, yes. Tom, if you want to go ahead with that, okay.
For you then. So just to clarify some of the figures that are going around with the vacant building credit and what percentage of affordable housing is being provided. As was already mentioned, the vacant building credit calculation, as a result of that national policy, reduces the full policy ask from 30% to 18%. So that's from 12.6 dwellings to 7.6 dwellings, so 13 to 8 dwellings. The applicant is of the opinion that the 410,000 is equivalent to providing the full 8 dwellings. That the housing officer's calculation on what would be equivalent to 8 dwellings would be more like 900,000. So therefore, what we find is that the 410,000 is equivalent to being able to provide 4 dwellings of comparable value to the ones on site, on the basis of Councillor Panel's approach, which is the difference between what you would buy a full market dwelling for and what you would sell it to an RP for. That difference changes depending on the type of affordable housing you'll be providing. So social rented properties, a registered provider purchases for less money than an affordable rented property or an intermediate shared ownership property. And the values of the 4 kind of equivalent is based on a blend of different types based on policy. So where we end up is that the £410,000 offer really provides equivalent of 4 units affordable housing, which is about 45% of the full policy provision after the vacant building credit is taken into account. We'll also reiterate the point, you'll not be surprised that my advice is that this is a good position from a viability point of view in terms of what the scheme is able to contribute. Once all the values and costs are taken into account, as an improved offer from the previous position of the last committee, and in line with my original report, albeit the circumstances have changed since the original report. And therefore, pure viability issues that would be difficult to prevent. This if it was purely about viability, then that would be my advice.
Thank you. Can I just ask you, obviously you base that viability on unit sales, and the cost of those unit sales. What about if the price of those units goes up? Then would there be more money?
Yes, available? Well, as with any viability assessment, they inevitably are at a point in time.
Yeah.
So although values have gone up, we've also seen that build costs have gone up over the same period. And there's the issue which has been mentioned at the last committee of the income through ground rent, which is being going through and being legislated at the moment of not being an income line that will be available to the developer potentially. There are, as discussed at a previous committee, I have seen for that upward review mechanisms included in Section 106 agreements. That would be, I don't know whether it would be unusual to including that based on this being an increase without prejudice of the club, but I have seen those in that then once developments have taken place that the real build costs and the real sales values are re-evaluated. Yeah.
Can I just come in as well about the clawback, because they can work both ways. So you are risking that we could still get, we could end up with nothing. If the applicant says, no, we want it, it's going to be a two-way clawback, then we could.
Well, no, we just said it's an upwards only clawback.
You can do it upwards only, but they will quite often push back and say they want it to work both ways, and I wouldn't want to be losing anything from this, for the changes that may come in legislation and those ground grants.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you. Members, so we've got it's been proposed for President to approve, which has been proposed and seconded. Does anyone else wish to speak at this stage? Councillor Hodgson?
I'd like to propose refusal.
Okay, but I'm going to take approval first. Can I just say, from my point of view, I mean, I think, first of all, I'd like to thank the committee. You have to remember that Churchill at first said there wasn't any money available at all. It's because of the intransigence of this committee that at least we've got £410,000 in total. Albeit a small piece, but I mean, you know, at least we've got that. So I think we need to be, we need to stand our ground on many occasions.
Absolutely.
My own views, I mean, I do find this development incredibly disappointing. It's a fantastic site for Totnes, a fantastic building for Totnes, and quite frankly, turning Totnes into an old people's home is not the way forward. But having said that, I don't think we've got the policies to stop it, and it's something that we need to, address.
How comes it's always the planning authority that's over the barrel?
Well,
Every application.
When you speak to our local MP, he'll tell you that it's a local decision, nothing to do with it.
Do you know, I've not actually met him yet.
Yeah, all right, well, I'm sure. Anyway, members, so.
What I would say is that this is, as you say, site right in the heart of it. We can't make our policies work there.
Yeah.
Where can we?
Exactly.
Why are they not being asked to deliver 30% on site? Okay, not 18%, whatever it's been written down to. But nevertheless, if they have to deliver on site, at least we would know we would be getting it, rather than 10 grand that just gets tossed around, down the next year.
I
nothing gets involved, except it gets given to a housing developer who then starts to shut. I mean, I just despair. It cannot just exist.
No, I've got a lot of sympathy with you.
It's being validated if it doesn't comply with policy.
Yeah. No, I've got a lot of sympathy with you. Well, at the stage, of course, when they first did it, they said they also tick all the boxes, as they always do. And then they go,
it's just that we just roll over. We just roll over.
Well, yeah. Right, members. Anyway, so it's a recommendation for approval being proposed and seconded. Can I see all those in favour of approval, please show? And those against? 3. That application is approved. Thank you.
Give it 10 years, that'll be obsolete, I guarantee it.
Right, now we've got a few more applications to go. Thank you very much, Tom. Thank you. I suggest that we find
Jet lag.
members to move on to the Garden Lodge Leaving Drive, one we've had before. Come back to Miss Houselander.
Will this stop councillor Powell contributing?
Yeah.
Okay, well, wait. No, we don't.
I didn't even see him go.
I assume that all that last time that we just approved it was all the conditions that were listed there, and it's slightly up in the way on the there you go.
There is a condition on parking, and I'm just be communicating. And this has done this, make sure that it's very detail or leisure that it's to the Totnes town rather than public use for long-term park.
Okay, yeah. No,
That's 27 conditions that I can.
There's not long-term parking there, it's just an hour and a half.
Yeah, well, what I mean is that they don't just give the space to a non-public to use.
He's back.
Thank you.
We're off again. Miss Houslander.
Sorry, yes. Okay, yeah, this application came before you, I think a couple of 2 or 3 committees ago. After the live visit, it's an application for replacement dwelling in a Barbie Lodge, Cleveland Drive, Bigfield C. This is the site. Just up here. That's the site there. I don't propose to go give the amount of presentation as previously because you're all very familiar, I think, with the site. And I'll just quickly go through where it is, Google image. Since the previous application, the applicant has moved the proposed dwelling forward on the site, such that it is now 8.9 or 9 metres from the Willows, which is the property at the back here, precinct 7, and has also so it's moved forward by approximately 1.75 metres in further forward on the site. The result of that is obviously that the gable extension here does extend in front of the building, the existing building line, and as a result of that, there is potential there is an impact, slight impact on this dwelling in that this extends forward, so that part of their view is missing. So as they look across the bay, the bit towards Bampton really is missing from that view that they currently have. However, as I said in my report, private individuals are not entitled to a view in planning terms. So that's that issue. This is just a slightly bigger plan.
I've got a query, it refers to that bit. On page 114, you've got an unfinished sentence.
Sorry.
Which probably refers to the same thing. It says, by moving the proposal forward of the site, the bulk of the building moves forward such that the amount.
Yes, I noticed that one already.
Yeah.
I don't know what I was going to say.
With something to do with what you were just saying.
Yeah. Sorry, my laptop just run out. Use.
Where do you need to get?
Only 3 hours to go,
Yeah, I saw Tom that about.
Well, if it's not material, don't worry, but you can remember what it said.
No power.
We get overtime.
It's double what you normally
I'm going to need a pee in a minute.
Ferrari's just put that.
Was that a Ferrari?
Yeah, there's a Ferrari.
Whose was that? Oh, beg your pardon.
So I just wanted to let you know the changes that have happened since the previous application. As I say, it's been moved forward by 1.75 metres. The decking on the eastern side has been reduced by 1 metre. It previously went further out into the boundary. There's a very small decrease in the decking on the front here by 300 mil
which means that the applicant is suggesting that this area here has been concern expressed by some of the objectors that this area could impact on the adjoining neighbour. But this is actually a footpath coming up here, and this actually is a level access onto the decking, so it's likely to be more of an access onto the wider bit of decking where the seating and what have you will take place. So this plan just shows the revision. On the top drawing, you can see this is actually the Derby Dean in the background. This is the proposed dwelling down there. There were issues with regard to the potential for overlooking of this window to Highfield. However, the size of the window has been decreased very slightly, and the distance between the two wall to wall is just over 21 metres, which our SPD indicates is an acceptable distance. I know a couple of the objectors have raised the issue that if it's a 3-storey dwelling, then the distance should increase to 28 metres. And I know that the objectors consider this to be a 3-storey dwelling. My view, however, is that if anything, it's a 2-storey dwelling with a garage set underneath. A typical 3-storey dwelling would actually be 3 stories in a much more, would be probably twice the height, or at least a story above the height of the proposed building. So the images here, this is showing it with the wall and some planting above. This is showing it without any of the planting. This is the view, top view is the one that would be seen from the willows, which is behind the development. And the applicant has indicated the height of the willows, which is this, and then the height of the willows if they were to also carry out their planning application, which increases the height of their dwelling. Just pointing it out, the applicant will get on the plan. And this bottom, this bottom view is the view that will be seen by the occupants of Derby Dean from their rear garden. So I think there's some images later on in the presentation that the objectors have asked to be included, which will see the potential impact from them. And this is the front elevation as proposed. Again, with the willows indicated at the rear. So I didn't include any of the visuals. There's been some criticism of the visuals. The objectors have submitted visual images, as have the applicant. And there was question marks both from the applicant perspective and the objectors as to whether or not those images were accurate. So rather than give those images to members, and I couldn't verify the applicant with them, so I felt it wasn't appropriate to include them in the presentation. So the issues with regard to this one, firstly, is the principle of development. The principle of development in terms of our planning policy and the neighbourhood plan is accepted. Replacement dwellings can be achieved, and in principle, both from the JLP and the neighbourhood plan, it's acceptable. The design, as I say, has moved forward on the site. We've reduced the amount of decking. As you will know, I recommended approval for the previous scheme. So, in my view, the design changes are acceptable. And also, in my view, the design does accord with the joint plan and the neighbourhood plan, in particular policies B7 and Appendix 9 in the neighbourhood plan. Impact on the street scene and neighbours is another issue. I thought that the previous scheme was acceptable in terms of neighbours, overlooking to any of the neighbours, and where there was perceived overlooking within the SPD guidance. The other issues, drainage, ecology, carbon reduction, access and highways are all acceptable in planning policy terms. Now, the one issue that
we refused the previous application on was with regard to impact on neighbours, two issues. One was impact on neighbours and the other one was the scale and massing of the development and its impact on the street scene. As you will see from the report and also the images, the scale and massing has not been reduced. So there could be an argument that they haven't addressed, if you like, the second reason for refusal. And that's for you to make your mind up about that. But as I said previously, my recommendation for the previous application was approval, and my recommendation remains for it to be approved.
Thank you very much. Any questions? No, in which case we'll move on to speakers. Mr. Monday. You see, hand all up.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Afternoon, sir. Welcome. You've got 3 minutes, sir, and when you finish, members of the committee may want to ask you some questions of clarification.
Okay, thank you.
Over to you.
So, most of you know me from last time. I'm Jeremy Monday, the owner of Dirty Dean, the bungalow attached to Barbie Lodge. I'm objecting for myself and on behalf of Willows and Highfield. We are here again to review a proposal for a 3-storey house with habitable rooms to the equivalent of 8 bedrooms, although it's presented as a 4-bedroom. Its principal outdoor amenity area is a raised terrace that projects into the air over the front garden at 1st floor height. The house protrudes 1.7 metres past the front building line and 2.7 metres into the back garden. We contend that the position of the house on the plot, its height, 8 metres at the front and 6 metres at the rear, and the creation of the new front and side terrace on its own, almost the size of the current bungalow, as the main outdoor amenity area, these all combine to make the proposal unacceptable in terms of dominance, overlooking, impact on the street scene, outlook, noise and light pollution. The current submission does not resolve the previous problems, but does create new ones. Pulling the house forwards on the site and down towards the street increases the dominance of the building and its terrace in the street scene. This 1st floor terrace, serving such a large building with so much glazing, will be a source of noise and light pollution. The building is so large that my 1-storey bungalow will now be dominated at the rear by a 6-metre blank wall, 1 metre from my boundary, and at the front by a 2-storey extension that limits my outlook, and a terrace that looks directly into my windows. Willows is still overlooked by a large bank of 2nd floor windows, only 7.5 metres from the boundary, that look directly into their bathroom, their lounge and their private garden. Their outlook towards the sea is still impeded. Highfield is still dominated by the 6-metre house uphill from it. The side terrace and 2nd-storey full-height window look directly down into their private spaces. Given the height difference in the land, the 21-metre distance between the properties does not comply with the 28 metres required by the supplementary development plan. Councillors should again reject the application due to over-dominance, impact on outlook, perceived overlooking and visual intrusion, impact on street scene, noise and intrusion from new terrace, loss of views and overdevelopment of a bungalow site. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Members, any questions for Mr. Monday? No? Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Now, call for supporter, Mr. Marshall.
that site visit because I'm not here. Because I poorly then. Yeah, I think I must have missed it.
Hello, Ms Marshall.
I don't
3
think
minutes,
I was there.
sir, and then councillors may ask questions about points of clarification. That's okay. So over to you.
Thank you. My name's Jonathan Marshall. Whilst this is not a planning matter, I think it is important for the committee to be aware of the personal impact this planning process has had on myself and my family. This matter is currently being investigated by the monitoring officer at South Hams, and he'll read out shortly. I think it's really important that as we come and present this property development for the second time, that we make sure we focus on the facts. That we make sure we focus on the actual development that we're proposing to put forward. And I really ask the committee today to focus on those facts. I'm here to defend my plans to build a family home. I'm here to defend the right of homeowners within Bigbury to develop their own homes. And I'm here to defend the local economy. The tradesmen and women need to be able to help renew the ageing life of properties within Bigbury on Sea. And stifling that development is a real challenge. I'm hopefully here to help the committee assess our plans based on the details of the plans, the architectural drawings, the detailed plot surveys, and the computer models that we've created. And I really would ask the committee to listen to the planning officer, to listen to what the planning officer has said about our plans and how they comply with all policy. We must not be swayed by the potentials of rhetoric and miscommunication that was presented last time we put our plans forward. We had scenes of flags on sticks, which really were unjust and did not create fact as to what our plans really look like. Nor should we be swayed by the new images that have been created, of a glass balcony viewing back up at Dilly Dean. And let me be clear, there is no balcony, it's actually a path to the front of the property. It's a path that has disabled access to the front of the property. If that drawing was to be accurate, as was mentioned by Ms Houselander, the characters would have to be 8 to 9 feet tall. It just shows the level of accuracy that the parish council and members of the parish are bringing. And I think we really need to challenge ourselves to focus on reality in this case. So let me give you some of the facts. We are replacing a very tired 1950s bungalow with an eco-friendly new build. We use a significant gradient of the plot to create a basement area for storage. And we have a first floor at the same level as what it is today. And we create additional bedrooms in the roof space. It is not a 3-story house. It is a bungalow. We're using concrete form, solar panels, solar slate, air source heat pumps, as well as other eco-friendly designs. I would stress that this is the style of architecture, and this is the type of building the South Hams needs to embrace as we work towards our net zero and our carbon agenda that we all have. And let me think about reasons why our last property was refused. We had the comment of a perceived overlooking. That window has been removed, and that window actually is obscured. I would seek that I ask the committee to really address our plans based on facts. We really think this is important, the integrity of this committee, to do so. And thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, sir. Members, any questions for Mr Marshall? No? Okay, thank you very much, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Right, now get the parish council, Mr Scott.
Oh, sorry.
Hello, Councillor Scott. Good to see you.
It's not evening yet, see?
Yes. You've got 3 minutes, and then members may ask for points of clarification, if that's okay. Over to you.
Thank you. Chair, members of the committee, my name is Valerie Scott. I'm a parish councillor and I'm here to represent the parish council. This application is very similar to that which was refused in May. The main difference is that the new dwelling is located 1.75 metres further forward from the site. The overall massive size, height of the proposed dwelling remains virtually the same. There have been some very minor amendments to the design. It is still a very large 3-story house, capable of accommodating far more than 4 bedrooms. The footprint is increased in size
But more importantly, the gross floor space would be more than trebled and moved forward on the plot to break front building line. The revisions were intended to address the first reason for refusal of the previous application, the negative impact on the neighbouring properties. However, the proposals will still harm the amenities of neighbours in terms of being dominant and overbearing, causing loss of outlook to both Durley Dean and Willows, and problems of overlooking Willows, Highfield, and now Durley Dean. The impact of scale and massing and the negative impact on the street scene, the second reason for refusal, would be worse than brought the dwelling and a massive raised platform forward on the site. Another problem now relates to the reduced area for parking at the front, whether the plan item 1 is there. There's insufficient space to park 3 cars, as required by the neighbourhood plan, and to manoeuvre past any parked cars, to enter and leave the forward here, as proposed in this application. Policy BP7 of the neighbourhood plan seeks to ensure that new development fits in with the general pattern of development in the local area and protects the amenity of local residents. The proposed development would be contrary to the criteria of this policy, which requires new development to reflect the appearance and character of the local area. The height, scale, and density of development should reflect the existing. The front building line should be maintained. Proposals should protect residential amenity, limit the impact on light pollution, and provide a safe means of access and adequate off-street parking. All of these problems have arisen due to the size, massing, scale, and positioning of the new dwelling. The application should be refused. It is contrary to policy BP7, design guidance for people on screen, and now BP27 parking provision.
Thank you very much, Councillor Scott. Members, any questions for Councillor Scott? No? Thank you very much. Good to see you. And now we'll go to the ward member first, Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I would like to reserve my thoughts on the debate, if I may.
Of course.
This is what everybody's got to say.
Okay, right. Thank you. Right, members. Over to you. Maybe the Councillor Taylor has to go first anyway. But I think, you'd like to hear what other people got to think. Councillor Abbott.
I have one question and one comment. Is such a thing as building lines still an element in Parliament? Thank you. And my comment is, if you imagine the bits of that building that will be visible, which is, I guess, that's the current garden walls, is that white bit? Or, yeah?
The white bit is a balcony in front of the decking.
So could you put your cursor where you see over from the road outside from the garden?
You can see this view.
But that right-hand building, the proposed building, does not look to me like it's overbearing the building on the left. It's just a bit bigger, that's all. That's my view.
I mean, obviously, Councillor, do you remember we went there for a site visit?
Yes.
You may not remember it.
No, I remember it.
Yeah, okay.
What's the point of that then?
No, just to say, so you know the site,
Yes.
you know
Okay.
Yeah,
my point there.
Yeah.
To me, that is not over.
Yeah. No, fair enough.
Sorry, Chair, I think I ought to qualify my answer to Councillor's question rather than that very slight shake there. There is no such thing as a building line that beyond this line you cannot build. But obviously, as part of the planning consideration, if something is being built further forward than the rest of the properties in the street, the question was whether that has an adverse impact on the street scene as a whole. Wouldn't be, there's no black line over which you cannot cross.
Yeah, Chairman, I'm disappointed because, I don't think the applicant listened to the committee the last time. And this has been brought forward, is going to make it look even bigger in the street scene. It's going to be there right in your face. One of the things that I didn't like in the first place. And I disagree with previous current. I think the middle there, bigger, but it just doesn't fit. I mean, I understand that the other buildings are old and tired and just trying to have something new. But I just think it's just too much on that plot, and it involves too many other neighbours. That's my first thoughts on it.
Thank you, Councillor Long.
To potentially reflect what Councillor Foss has said, I hope to see more substantial changes to what came before us, having listened to what was said. I am concerned about parking space availability. It does seem very tight, considering the roads are very tight. On-street parking is obviously important. I can't figure out whether the actual space underneath is just for storage or whether it's parking, because I think the doors look very tight to get a car in and out of there, particularly now it's restricted to the front. And for me, the creation or the sort of moving forward of that large patio area, which is to the front and wraps round, there is a worrying trend of that happening to the front properties all over the area, and it's something that concerns me, that we're sort of introducing a very visible element rather than being a back garden or a side. And it does tend to change the street scene quite considerably. So, you know, I'm disappointed that there weren't more substantial changes to it to reflect what we said rather than just moving it forward.
Thank you, Councillor Rowe.
Thank you, Chairman. Ms. Hunstanton, could you go back to the picture that you had on the screen of the shots that Councillor from next door Abbott asked you about? There's 2 up and 2 down. That one? No, it was the plants. And it disappeared now. I was going to ask you, there were red lines across the top of the outside. And that's it, thank you. Yeah. I can't read the writing, but is that where the new roof will be? Where the new roof will be? Is that the look of the new? This is the location of the new roof. Yeah. Not where the red lines are.
No, the red lines are basically indicating the height for Willows, which is behind, which is the existing height.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, and the white line going across this, that is the
balcony to the decking.
Right.
Which is, I think it's the proposal is for it to be glazed, so that's why it's white.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kemp.
Not entirely. Can we look at that, the overall plan again that showed all the decking? That one. So I'm a bit concerned as to how much is decking. I mean, that whole site is covered, isn't it? Really, is there no lawn? No sort of. There's a bit of green indicated there and a bit down there.
The width of the decking is about 2 metres, and the width of the main garden is just over 2 metres.
Right. Okay. And so there's obviously a garage underneath that, is there? Right, okay.
And the decking extends out, so the platform, if you like, steps forward of the building line of the garage.
Right.
So it overhangs the front parking area.
Okay.
Okay, any more there? Right. Councillor Taylor?
Yeah, right. Thank you very much. Just to go back on this green area that we were on, right? I mean, that is no longer because it's going to be a parking area on the front. That's everybody green that the council is referring to is 4 feet for
I was talking about the side. Sorry.
Oh, you're looking at the
Yeah.
side.
Yeah, so the eastern side where the decking extends around the side of the dwelling, it's 2 metres of decking,
Yeah.
just over 2 metres of garden. So the front, it will be
I
a
think
garden.
councillor looking at it. That's fine. But this, as you all know, this is a reapplication that we refused in May. Many of the reasons for the refusal have not been assessed, and it remains an overdevelopment of a small site. And this application, by moving it forward by 1.75 metres, is even on the screen does not comply to Big Three Rivers Ban BP7. This actually does not preserve the character of the area, which is what we were looking to do. And this was, there's not, none does it comply. And again, it's developing in the area B. I know that was Patrick, you know, that last one, but another. But it does affect the neighbours' amenities. Or they can't demand a view, but the amenity that is imposed upon, then that obviously is a plan issue, and I will stand corrected on it or not. And of course, it has a major impact really on the A&B and the heritage. And this is not fixed. Frances Scott put this very well, because she is a planning consultant in her own right. I mean, if we agree to pass this, it will show minor changes to the first application. I would propose refusal on this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Any more for any more? Councillor Abbott.
Sorry to come back. I was just wondering about this decking. Decking can't be an issue of planning requirement in itself, can it?
It can over a certain height. So it's over, there is a development of decking within the general planning development order. But if it is, I think it's above 30 centimetres off the ground level, it would need planning permission.
Okay. Fine. So all
Well, it would apply to the bits at the front, because the site is sloping, it probably wouldn't apply, probably wouldn't apply to the, maybe from here backwards, only that small amount that wouldn't need permission.
Okay.
Councillor Rose, do you want to?
Oh, yes. I'm disappointed that there's not an awful lot of distance. They've moved it a little here and there, but there are no sort of significant changes that have taken place. And I intend to agree with Councillor Taylor, so I will second this proposal for reviews.
Okay. Thank you, members. I've got a proposal for refusal, which has been seconded. So we'll take a vote on that. Can I have reason, please? Against the recommendation.
Yeah, well, the reasons haven't changed much from last time, to be honest. It's not development of this site. There's no two ways about that. It does not fit into the street scene by any means, because it's actually more negative on the street scene than it was before, because it's moved forward onto the street by 1.75 metres. And they might have done away with one window, but by moving it forward, they've impacted more on the front of the neighbouring bungalow. So there's none of those reasons we covered down last time, or very few, has actually been addressed. That's my
Okay, Mr. Wyman, just like to quickly.
Just on that point, I've got the 2 reasons for refusal in front of me from the previous application. If we deal with the street scene issue first, because that's the one we're trying to. So the previous reason for refusal was scale and massing of the proposed dwelling would have a negative impact on the street scene, and as such, the overall character of the area contributes policy DEB 20 in the development plan and policy DEB 7, the big neighbourhood plan, as well as paragraph 127 of the NDPF. I suspect paragraph 127 will have to be changed because there's been an updated NDPF that what paragraph ones have changed. What you're saying, Councillor, what you're proposing is that reason hasn't changed other than the tweak of the specific policy, not paragraph in the NDPF. The first reason for refusal, I think this is the one, there's some elements that I really would like members to consider, is on the basis of your statement. The proposal by virtue of its new position, I think that's still relevant, on the site to create a negative impact on neighbouring properties to the north, west and east, in terms of overlooking and perception of property. Does it still affect all 3 sides? And is there still overlooking and perception overlooking given that it will be removed? Being dominant and overbearing, causing a loss of outlook on the policy, DB 1, BB 7 again. Now, from what you're saying, I think you are saying it's still dominant and overbearing. I would like you to your other members to think about whether you're still saying it has a negative impact on all 3 sides, and whether it's still overlooking and perception overlooking, because I have no doubt in my mind this will be as the other one has, and the inspector was going to ask you, because it's a committee decision, to demonstrate that all of these little points are in fact defendable.
The back, although the window on the side of it, but to go on the rear, there's now some dormer windows in there, 3 dormer windows I think along the back edge that actually overlooks. I don't know that the bungalow is going to be ready, that there is a plan for a patio area to go in there, I know, but maybe I'll miss out somewhere there.
Just to clarify, these windows are not dormer windows. They are windows that effectively go over the edge of the roof. So if you imagine the roof comes down and the windows go like that and then come down like that. So they're not dormers. So part of the window you don't get to see the sky, but this part of the window you will get to look out.
The point you raised, you're correct. They have addressed some of that, but they certainly haven't addressed the overbearing.
I'm not trying to push members in anything. No, it's very right. We need to make sure that the reason for refusal reflects the application. Good point.
So, I mean, you've heard what Mr. Wyman has to say.
But Chairman, this is not much different than the first one. I mean, the first one was changed just a couple against, I think. Everything else, everybody voted against. Now, if we go the other way without any movement, then I don't agree that's correct. But
no, I think what Mr. Wyman is saying was, look, the inspector will look at it, and if we said same objections as last time, and then they say, for example, like the window, that's
I understand. Yeah.
Why you can't? You don't still say it's a complaint about the window. So we taking it out?
I said that there's certain aspects they have improved on, but not enough to change my mind on the fact is that it's still overbearing, it's too massive for the plot, and so by moving it forward, it's actually increased negativity on the street scene, and that is my view.
Okay. Councillor Brown, then I'll come to you, Councillor Hodgson.
Thank you. Perhaps to help Councillor Taylor slightly in light of what Mr. Wyman said, might I suggest that amongst reasons for refusal, you have the property's rear is removed from your reasoning. That would be my suggestion.
How do you feel about that?
Yes. I mean,
Okay.
it's still intrusive building, it's a big building. I agree with it. I agree that the bungalow needs to review that, but to go better, because they all do, and built donkeys here. But I think this is, the footprint on it is massive compared to that. You can turn the two-bedroom bungalow into big house.
That's what we're arguing, not arguing about that, are we? The actual repair and the design of it, just.
Well, it's the actual
item
and the last thing.
To be clear, the only thing I'm questioning, after listening to the debate, is whether you consider the proposal has a negative impact on neighbouring properties to the northwest and east in terms of overlooking and perception of overlooking. But being dominant and overbearing, you made that quite clear that that's your view. I'm only seeking clarification as to whether the reason for refusal includes overlooking and the perception of overlooking, and if it does, in which direction. That's the only thing I'm seeking clarification on in terms of the reason for refusal for you to arrive.
And as far as I'm concerned, you go overlooking on, because it's moved forward, you've done away with the overlooking on the back end, but you've increased it on the front end.
Okay.
And on the southeast side, I call it southeast because it's a little bit, you call it east, but I call it southeast. There's a window there that looks over the next door neighbour, but I think that's far enough away not to because.
So that's basically the house to the front now, standing over the, to the left as you look at it.
Yeah.
Council's done it for us. I mean, they've listed it out very neatly, parish council. In terms of negative amenity on the neighbouring properties to the northwest and east of the proposed dwelling, the proposed development will still result in overlooking the properties to the north Willows, to the east Highfield, and now direct overlooking of the living room, kitchen, and bedroom at the front of the property to the west, Durley D, due to the upper raised ground floor platform, which is now situated between 1.5 to 3 metres in front of the house.
That's fine. If members who are in an agreement then previous refusal doesn't need to change. So all I'm trying to see is whether that needs.
Councillor Taylor, it's your proposal. You happy with those reasons as read out by Councillor Hodgson? Yeah. Okay. Okay. Well, that's what it will be.
Well, it will be in the first part of it, because then there's also talk about dominant overbearing.
Councillor Abbott.
So in the way that Councillor Hodgson has contributed, my contribution is it does not overlook to the north. It's lower.
Okay.
It does not overlook.
Okay, so let me stop you there. You'll be voting against the refusal. So don't worry, you don't need to explain why you will. I think you already said that.
Chairman, can I suggest a final wording of the reasons to be agreed with the proposer and yourself?
Yeah, that's fine. Yes, okay. Right, so. Yeah. Yeah, no. Okay, right, so proposal for objection, to object, refusal, which is proposed and so proposed by Councillor Taylor, seconded by Councillor Rowe. So all in favour of refusal, please show. And those against refusal? And abstentions, 2. That is refused. Thank you, members. Right, last one. Here we go. Ms. House Manager, give you a minute break if you want. Please. Yes, okay. So let's press on with the final application. Ms. Houselander again.
Yeah, just before I start, just note on the title page, it says David Land, but it's actually David Lane. So apologies for the misspelling. This is the application site here. From David's Lane, which is just outside Fulham. This is the site on Google Map, and this is the proposal. The proposal is for 2 detached dwellings on the land, which many years ago was a former caravan campsite. It's now been built. There's a couple of photos of the site. And this is I assume it's taken using a drone. There's a sort of higher level view of the site, which the applicant included in their design and access statement, which I thought was useful for you to see. This site adjacent is a building site currently, and it's the TTB7 allocation in the JLP development. This site and another site combined, I think, is about 200 houses. And of the application site is here. There was a previous application on the site which was refused because at that time it was considered that the site was in the countryside and the impact of the development was detrimental to the landscape character, but also in principle terms was not acceptable because it was in an unsustainable location. Obviously now that application went to appeal, the appeal inspector came back and said that he agreed with the fact that it was in an unsustainable location, landscape character, and dismissed the appeal. The appeal inspector also implied in his statement that it may change once the allocation gets built out. At the time of the previous application, I think there might have been a pre-app in with us, but nothing more. So we didn't know at that stage whether it would go anywhere or not. The current application, in planning policy terms, actually nothing has changed. So it's still not a sustainable location. I'd like to go back to the image. So the hedge line here is the edge of the TTB7 allocation, and so it's still not within an allocated site, and it's also not within a settlement. Clearly, once this is built out, the Ivy Bridge settlement extends to this point where the hedgerow is. But as I said, from a policy perspective, it remains unsustainable. There's no gaps proposed in this hedge, and there's no links that could be incorporated between the approved development and this development because of the nature of that approval. So if you would need to walk to the Ivy Bridge Centre, which is 2 kilometres away, you'd have to use David's Lane, which has got no pavements, and then go up onto the main road, or alternatively go down to the bottom of David's Lane, and I'll just show you go down to the bottom of David's Lane and go this way into Ivy Bridge. Both routes are navigable. So it's not a sustainable location because it's not close to relevant facilities. The other issue with regard to this is with regard to housing need. The housing need for which has been discussed in the Ugborough neighbourhood plan is actually for smaller units. And whilst this proposal is in outline currently, there is information which suggests that they will be 2 detached 4-bedroom houses, whereas the housing need is for 2 and 3-bedroom houses. So it would not meet a local housing need. The impact on the landscape clearly has been reduced by virtue of the fact that the allocated site is next door. But in my view, the nature of the site, the site itself relates much more to David Lane and the rural character rather than the development to the west, I think it's development to the west. The other issue that's been raised is from our highway authority, who suggests that there will be a need for a much bigger visibility display than the access which is here, which currently is provides, which would also mean the potential loss of some hedgerow, which again would impact on the sort of slightly more rural character of this site. The other issue, there's a few other issues in terms of reasons for refusal. There's insufficient information in terms of biodiversity, in terms of the 10% gain that we need to see. There are no carbon reduction measures proposed, although because it's in outline, we could, if members chose to approve it, we could add a condition requesting those measures. And also no unilateral undertaking has been submitted in regard to the Tamar SAC requirements. We would be requiring some money from the development because of the impact on recreation in the Tamar special area of conservation, and no such undertaking has been provided. And in terms of drainage, insufficient information has been submitted. However, the reason we knew about that, but I didn't ask for that information because I knew there was an in-principle objection to it, and therefore didn't want the applicant to go to the extent of doing that, knowing that we would be recommending refusal. My recommendation is therefore for refusal.
Thank you very much. Any questions, members? No? In which case we will move to speakers. Ms. French, also. Hello there, Ms. French. Good to see you. Got 3 minutes, and then when you finish, members of the committee may want to ask a couple of questions or whatever for clarification, that's right.
Yeah, just one point, Ms. House on the day, it said full, it's not a, yeah.
Sorry, another.
It's an outline planning.
It's an outline planning.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that clarification. Anyway, over to you.
Good afternoon, good evening. I'm here again in front of you to present my application. Back in August 2019, following a very close vote for refusal, your chairman encouraged us to reapply when Livelihoods development had commenced. As you can see from the picture, have you got my picture? Yes, thank you. Taken in January, our application site A is no longer in a countryside location, and I believe should not be considered so in policy terms. Since that picture, Livelihoods development phase 1 has progressed right down through the site. Site B, north of White Oaks, is now under construction, and phase 2 of Livelihoods, site C, to the left, is commencing. And I understand in future all site traffic will be using David's Lane as access route, alongside the current use where all site workers use the temporary car park south of the industrial unit, you can see on the left. Hence, my point is that David's Lane has become the natural entrance to the main town of Livelihoods. Our proposal is therefore fully consistent with the settlement hierarchy in TTB1. By definition, this is a sustainable location for development, and TTB 26, which is referenced in the officer report, is irrelevant. On sustainability grounds, our site is closer to local facilities than parts of the Bloor site, and also other developments in Ivybridge. This can be seen in our supporting documents. You can see from the photo that the site is hidden from wider views. Given the topography, it is in a dip and mature trees around its boundary. It's a natural infill site. For some unexplained reason, the officers have now added 4 new reasons for refusal. To refuse consent on the basis of the fact that the proposal are 4 rather than 3-bed homes is incomprehensible and a misuse of policy DEP 8. The visibility display and the drainage issues and the Tamar one, which we didn't know about, which are stated, can be easily overcome. I feel the officers seem to be taking a totally disproportionate approach to our modest proposal, ignoring the huge change in context for the site. Oakborough Parish Council actively supported us. Devon Highways raised no objection and commented that the previous use, i.e. campsite, could potentially generate more traffic than 2 dwellings. to refuse our application on the bureaucratic policy interpretation in the officer's report would be to fly in the face of common sense. Additionally, no credit at all has been given to our proposal for low carbon, high architectural spec that will significantly exceed JLP requirements. These will not be second homes, but individual, interesting dwellings, one for us and one for our daughter, with large biodiverse gardens at the end of the town. Let fairness and justice prevail. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. French, members, any questions? I'll just say one thing. I mean, Ms. French, I appreciate you don't agree with the planning officer's report, obviously. But I would say, you know, that we've refused it before and the inspector has agreed with us. So I think you may be a bit harsh to, you know, to come to that conclusion. I mean,
that's my view.
That's right, that's your view, and that's fine. And we have differing views throughout the committee as well.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I understand they're doing their job.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Any questions? No. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councillor Holloway, lovely to see you.
Thank you, Chairman.
We've been here since 10.
I've been here, yeah, no, I've only been here since 3:30. Well,
Yeah.
3 o'clock. Anyway,
likewise.
I'll try to be brief. I shouldn't be more than half an hour. Just to pick up on your last point, I believe the inspector did say that once the floor thing was built out, he might well take a different view. And I should say that it has a lot more dwellings on it than are shown there. And in fact, the local councillors have been invited by Bloor to go and have a look round in a week or two. So I do think that the development boundary was a bit arbitrary, being along that hedge rather than along the road. And I think the bit of a clue is there's pages and pages of justification, and if there was a good reason for it, it wouldn't have needed that much justification, in my view, Chairman.
Less is more.
I think, I think, you know, those fields have been under option for years. I've been told they've been under option for development for like 40 years, and so the boundary could well coincide with the land that was under option. It says it's too far removed from the settlement and open countryside. Well, you know, you can see that doesn't look like open countryside. You've got the blind transcription unit next to it, and then a builder's yard. What you can't see is the car park that Blair are using, and I understand what Devon County is saying, but there wasn't much traffic on this road until all the developers' employees started using the car park that's just out of shop. And to add insult to injury, Laura are now asking for permission from Devon County for all their construction traffic to come down David's Lane to get to the southern part of the development, rather than go through their own development, which adds insult to injury for the applicant, I think. With regard to sustainability, it's true, there is no footway up to the B3213, but then there is a footway all the way into Ivy Bridge, and it's hoped that that footway will eventually be multi-use for horses, cyclists, pedestrians. So, you know, and the schools are the schools are about a mile away, mainline station half a mile away, and the bus stop at the top of the road, about 100 metres. Now, that's more sustainable than the vast majority of the houses on the estates on the western side of Ivy Bridge. It's a nonsense to say it's not sustainable. It really is. I think the applicant, she didn't actually mention it, but I have discussed it with her, and they would be more than happy to have a primary use condition on it, because it's to accommodate family. And I know there's concern that we'd rather have smaller houses, but actually her children, one of which might have a new house and one of which might well have her house if they move to a new one, they're both in houses that are 2 or 3 bedrooms in the South Annex. So by building these, they could have their dream homes and they could release homes that we would like released for other people to use. So, you know, I think that's a valid consideration. You know, they, as I say, they put up with the noise of construction for long enough. And I think it's a terrible shame that they've had to put up with that and they can't have a couple of dwellings here. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much.
I'm happy to take questions.
Yeah.
Councillor Holman, could you remind us how many new houses have been completed since this site?
200. Well, I say 200, 1,000 altogether around the eastern side of Ireland.
Yeah, but it's 200 in the immediate first site, and then
I think it's 200 on both of those plots to be fair.
B and C as well.
B and C. Oh, not B, but no. Plus C, which is down here.
Yeah.
It's about 200, this Blair building.
Do you mean Blore?
Sorry,
Blore. Okay, sorry, just.
That's I
think you remember we've actually walked that.
We were down the SC because we were standing in the grass.
Yeah.
And you saw how quiet those lanes are. All of us locals walk up and down those lanes until we all start bringing down construction traffic. That there isn't, and that doesn't need a footpath. They're just not got traffic on them. And the southern route that's going past that letter C and up to the west, there is a proposal that becomes a cycle track, in addition to the one that's being constructed at the entrance to the railway station, at Rud Lane. That footpath is wide now. It's been put in the last year. There was an argument last time that the boundary had been settled. We couldn't move, we couldn't do anything on the outside of the boundary, and the boundary went on that hedge. That boundary, you can see, is just so totally arbitrary. That is a natural extension next to that building. That the officer, the appeals officer, thank you, could say something like, "Oh, it'll be okay when they build it out." What sort of a judgment is that? But it's not going to be me to criticise an inspector, but we can take it to a judgment. And for those of you who voted in the majority last time that we had to hold the line, amongst today, we have had an argument from one of those same people that in the village Milton,
South Milton.
Don't have a brain. In Southampton, that the building was right on the edge. Couldn't we just let it go because it's the sense of it is not the drawn line by somebody who's doing their best in an office on some occasion. The sense of it is there. This is a natural development next to Austin.
And your question is?
Were you going to ask?
Why have you not asked the applicant to put some more houses, put four in there? Because it's a big space for two houses, right?
I think the point was to, if you like, to allow her offspring to have, if you like, their dream homes, you know, forever. Yeah, what a wonderful space to bring up children. You know, fantastic. And they've got the opportunity. And from an economic point of view, they can sell houses that we want, smaller houses, and probably build a dream home here for the same money because they didn't have to buy the plot. And that, you know, that's the sort of economics that people in this part of the world have to work to.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Okay, right. Any more questions for Councillor Holloway? No?
If I can just mention, Chairman, what you can see in the bottom corner is actually a lovely equestrian centre with big stable block, owners building and a menage. So it's not totally open countryside.
Right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Members, into the debate. Who would like to start? Yeah, Councillor Hodgson.
Yeah.
Well, it looks to me like this is actually very close to a quite substantial settlement. And hopefully there might be some small amenities follow all these houses, they've always. But I think it's really important that we seek to have diverse development. We don't just have suburbia sprawling all over Devon. And I think having the opportunity to have this adjacent to that new settlement, which is building at much higher density, I think will give a diversity that is actually is beneficial to the overall landscape. I actually would approval, because I think according to what the inspector said, that suggestion has now been met.
Thank you. Ms. Wine.
Before we go too much further, I think I know where this is going. There are some issues that Mrs. Householder raised, I think need to be taken up in any recommendation for approval. So I think it ought to be approval subject to 106 agreement for the Tamar Valley ZAC contribution, because that's applicable to all units.
Yeah.
Design Ridge. The
drainage information to be submitted. Biodiversity, I'm sure we could achieve that, 10%.
probably gone as a condition.
Yeah.
But I think we need the drainage information before we issue this. I don't see a situation where we get to a certain matters and there's an issue of drainage.
Yeah, okay, no,
So
agree with that.
so my suggestion would be delegated approval, conditions to be agreed. Chairman of all members, or chairman proposal of all members, but subject to the 106 and receipt of drainage information satisfactory.
Yeah, I think you can have that. I mean, I did hear that they're prepared to go for a primary residency. Now, we've heard that there are issues with that we might not be able to enforce it at a later date. But if we can get those, we can get it now, I don't see any problem in getting it, even though we may lose it.
No, they're more than happy to do that.
Well, if they could, that's great. I mean, I think we understand, and Ms. Bowles made it quite clear that we can't guarantee that. And if somebody tried to lift it, it would fall. But who knows, we may change our policy, in which case it would hold at that stage. So if we can get that, that'd be great.
So would that be a conditional one that you have?
Look, we've heard that it's a voluntary thing. We know we haven't got any way of enforcing it. So if they want to do it and we get it, I mean, that would be a gain, I think. But just bear in mind, members, that it's not a thing. I just think that if you can get it, why not get it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Councillor Rowe.
Yes, I'd like to ask, how big is the plot? Is it a field? 1, 2, 3 acres?
No, it's only the bit, the A bit. I'm not sure, to be honest. I think it's something well under an acre.
2 or 3 acres. We all like to build a couple of houses in the corner of the field. If we have a field.
Is that property in the middle staying then? Is it? Yeah.
Yes.
What is that?
What is that? Yeah.
That's a
house.
Right, so it's not ours.
So is that classed as agricultural land where they want to build? It would be now, yeah.
Although it's a field that they own, so they're not using it for agriculture, but it's a field that they own.
But it's arguably brown field, Chairman,
Well,
as much as it was a caravan site.
Well, it was, but it's not anymore. The other thing, members, I think that we should be aware of is sometimes we get allocated sites and the developer says, I'm going to go outside of the allocated site. Officers have objected to this on the grounds that they've gone outside the allocated site. I think if you're minded to accept, if you're minded to approve it, I think you should explain why this particular site should, why the fact it's outside of an allocated site, but why it should be an exception. Because what I don't want to do is if we suddenly, because otherwise every developer who's listening thinks, great, we can just push our allocated site, a few hundred yards into the next field. So if I could have a proposer and Councillor Hodgson, you propose it in a second then.
No, I finished it.
Sorry,
yes, because to me, it could have been classed as an exception site where we could have had some affordable, in inverted commas maybe, but four maybe affordable terraced houses could have been put in there. It could be a community land trust site with a couple of houses for the owners. They just want to fund like 4 very large, maybe spacious four-bedroom house, detached houses. And a lot of us would like to do that in all fields outside in our village areas.
Yeah.
So,
Well, Rose.
I don't support it.
No, fair enough, Rose. I'm sure, but if you've got to have 200 houses built in the field next door to you as well.
Yeah.
That's not quite.
Hopefully we'll get some social housing out of that.
Anyway, no, I mean, you know, Rose, that's fine. I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, right, members, you've had we've got a proposal for approval, which goes against officer recommendation. We've given the reasons. I'd still think we'd like to, and conditions. I'd still like to just, for the proposal second, just to clarify as to why something outside, you know, why we should change the boundary of the allocated site to accommodate this. Well, you can help.
It is an infill between established business premises that have been there for a long, long time, a private dwelling, and then further up, there's planning permission where there were commercial buildings, and now there's planning permission for a dwelling further up. And as I say, there's the equestrian centre this side of the road. So, it's not blatant, well out into the countryside by a long, long way.
Okay.
There's also, I think that's a toilet block. I'm not absolutely sure that's the one. There's that white fronted bit.
That one,
Yeah. Is that disused toilet block for the camping? So there is an element of it being a brownfield site.
Yeah. Okay. So, yes,
Sorry, I can't go that longer. There is no way that can be described as a brownfield site.
I wouldn't.
Sorry, that's stretching it.
No.
Right. Okay. Right, members. So, can I see all those in favour of approval, please show? And those against approval? And those abstaining? That is approved. That application is approved. Thank you very much, members. Well done. Call it 7.
You'll go, Pat.
Thanks, Sean.
I think it is.
We have appeals, we have finished on appeals.
You just got appealed.
They look all good, Pat.
Tom, you can stay if you want. Just for old time's sake.
I will have something to eat and get to Paris Council meeting by 7 o'clock.
No,
It's going to be late. I may be late. Oh, yes. Yeah.
Right, so appealed.
I'm really glad.
Oh, the agenda item 7 appeals.
I'll be very, Chair, I'll be very swift. Hopefully members have read all of them, so if you've got any questions, email them tomorrow. So, I'll only touch on the ones with questions. The first one is, Applewood, Bond Road and Kingsbridge, non-determination appeal, we would recommend refusal. It's in the AMD. I have to say this decision does surprise me a bit, so I don't agree with the decision. The inspector was satisfied that taken as a whole, the development, including the design appearance, was quite a contemporary structure, would not result in increased prominence, sensitive locations such as the accepted impact in AMD. I struggle with that one, but it's a subjective view. It's Lower Westerland, Malden was allowed. Fundamentally, the inspector considered it should be used as part of the built-up area of Malden. Alston Hall, Holberton, I think it knows how it's worth reading. I think it's an excellent decision and really does set out the balance between non-designated heritage assets, economic generation, and the bar that's got to hit to make that acceptable in unsustainable location. I think that's a really good one to read. I'm sure there's many here who will I was thinking the next one, which is Love Mill Park. I think we probably have for approval. I think.
Yeah.
And it's the one, and members of you know, the technical building is acceptable. It's a better spot down there. Yes, it's where you have justified you can't put it there, and that's effectively what you said. They haven't justified that better spot isn't acceptable. So if I accept I've lost that one, I will then get back on my hard horse. But the last two, which is Green Park Road. It is very pleasing that you did my costs against us. That was,
no, we should, either.
I think there's some very good things that come out of the costs decision. I'm not going to dwell on the actual bill decisions, because fundamentally, the inspector said, I'm happy with it. I think they didn't really consider anything other than drainage, so the legal authority said it's fine. I agree with you agree with both things. It is a little bit, I thought at one point she learned to improve the second application, she acknowledged that was better than the first one that she replied. The reason why costs weren't more, and I think this is a really good guide going forward, is the surface water scheme in the inspector's view cannot be entirely compartmentalised from the layout. Therefore, the council were entitled to consider the range. Members are also entitled not to accept professional custom offices, so long as a case can be made to the contrary. In this case, members express their planning judgment based on local knowledge and representations, including one from a suitably qualified person in drainage. I think if we hadn't had that, I think we'd have had costs against. So I think the lesson to take from this is that that's what we need to have. So if, for example, we have something we will refuse on highway grounds, and we haven't got a highway comment on what's in qualified person, that will put us in a bit of a difficulty. Where we've got subjective views, like you're making design views, I think that's they are happy to matters you're entitled to do on those ones. And the council's decision did not amount to a general assertion, supported by analysis and right. So I think in many ways, I think a planning officer who drafted that did a good job. I'm not surprised at the outcome. I'm not pleased with the costs. So that's all I've got to say. I've got, once the audit stopped, I've got to make one comment on
Right. Members, any more comments on that? No. You've got agenda item 8, which is the majors. I hope if you've got any questions, you've already raised those with the relevant officers. So we can just note that report. And I think that does bring us to the end. So thank you all very much. And I'll say that's the